universe operates on principles we understand: physics, chemistry, the fundamental laws of cause and effect. The Federation built its entire civilization on the belief that through observation, experimentation, and reason, any phenomenon could be explained. Warp drive, transporters. Even the seemingly miraculous Q continuum existed within some framework of reality, however incomprehensible. But what happens when something appears that defies every sensor, every theory, every rational explanation? What happens when a young man in red and blue awakens on your starship, clinging to the ceiling, and your finest scientific minds cannot tell you how or why? Captain Jean-Luc Picard stood on the bridge of the USS Enterprise-D, studying the view screen with the practiced calm of a man who had faced gods and monsters. Before him, space itself was wounded, a jagged tear in reality, approximately 200 meters across, shimmering with colors that had no name in any Federation database. The rift pulsed with energy signatures that made no sense, subspace distortions overlapping with quantum fluctuations that should have been mutually exclusive, readings that suggested the fabric of this universe was touching something else entirely. "Report, Mr. Data," Picard said. The android's fingers moved across his console with inhuman precision. "The anomaly appeared 14 minutes ago at coordinates marking the edge of the neutral zone, Captain. Initial scans detected a dimensional breach, a rupture between our universe and what appears to be an adjacent quantum reality. Energy output is fluctuating, but stable. However," Data paused, his head tilting in that distinctly curious manner, "there is something unusual." "More unusual than a hole in space-time?" Commander William Riker asked from his position beside the captain's chair. "Indeed, sir. Sensors detected a brief organic signature passing through the breach immediately before it began to collapse. The signature vanished before we could achieve a transporter lock." Counselor Deanna Troi leaned forward, her dark eyes troubled. "Captain, I'm sensing something. It's faint, but there's definitely a presence nearby. Confusion, fear, and something else, determination." "Life signs?" Picard asked. "Negative, sir," Worf growled from tactical, his Klingon features set in a scowl. "No life signs detected on the ship or in nearby space." "That's impossible," Dr. Beverly Crusher's voice came through the comm system from sickbay. "Counselor Troi can't sense something that isn't there." Picard stood. "Mr. Worf, initiate a level 1 security sweep of all decks. If something came through that breach, I want it found. Mr. Data, continue monitoring the anomaly. I want to know if—" "Captain," Data interrupted, something almost like alarm in his synthetic voice. "I am detecting unusual movement in the Jeffries tubes on Deck 12, Section 7. The pattern does not match any known Enterprise personnel or species in our database." "Security team to Deck 12, Worf commanded, already moving toward the turbolift. "Belay that order, Mr. Worf," Picard said. "We don't know what we're dealing with. It could be frightened, disoriented. Counselor Troi, you're with me. Data, Worf, let's investigate this carefully." The turbo lift ride to Deck 12 was tense. Troi closed her eyes, concentrating. "It's stronger now, Captain. Whatever it is, it's sentient. The emotions are distinctly humanoid. Panic, confusion, but also curiosity and guilt. It feels guilty about something." "Guilty?" Riker's voice came through the comm badge. "What would it have to feel guilty about?" "I don't know, but it's overwhelming. This being carries a tremendous burden." The doors opened onto a corridor in the engineering section. Emergency lighting cast everything in red shadows. Data's tricorder chirped softly as he scanned the area. "Captain, I am detecting residual energy traces. Whatever passed through this corridor defies conventional biology. The molecular adhesion patterns suggest—" A sound above them. Everyone looked up. A figure clung to the ceiling, silhouetted against the emergency lights. Human in shape, but the posture was wrong. Crouched like a spider, fingertips and feet somehow adhering to the smooth metal surface in a way that violated every principle of Federation physics. The figure wore a suit of red and blue, form-fitting, with a black spider emblem across the chest. A mask covered the face completely, large white lenses staring down at them, like the eyes of something ancient and alien. "Please don't shoot," the figure said, and the voice was young, male, and terrified. "I don't know where I am. I don't know how I got here. I was fighting the Green Goblin in New York, and then there was this light and, oh God, this isn't Earth, is it?" Worf's phaser was drawn instantly. "Identify yourself. How did you board this vessel?" "Worf, lower your weapon," Picard commanded. He looked up at the ceiling crawler, keeping his voice calm. "I am Captain Jean-Luc Picard of the Starship Enterprise. You're correct. This is not Earth. Not the Earth you know, at least. Can you tell me your name?" The masked figure was silent for a moment. Then slowly he reached up and pulled the mask back, revealing a young man's face, perhaps 25 years old, with brown hair and hazel eyes wide with shock. "My name is Peter Parker," he said, "but most people know me as Spider-Man." Data's tricorder emitted a series of confused beeps. "Fascinating. Captain, his cellular structure is human, but with radical deviations. His muscle density is approximately 8 times greater than should be possible for his body mass. His metabolism is operating at an accelerated rate. And there are proteins in his bloodstream that I cannot identify. They appear to be partially arachnid in origin." "Arachnid?" Beverly Crusher's voice cut in. "As in spider?" "Affirmative, Doctor." Peter Parker, Spider-Man, dropped from the ceiling, landing in a crouch that suggested reflexes far beyond human norm. He straightened slowly, hands raised. "Look, I know this is weird. Trust me, it's weird for me too. One second I'm web-slinging through Manhattan. The next I'm wherever this is. Some kind of spaceship?" His eyes darted to the Enterprise's distinctive architecture, the L-Cars panels glowing softly. "This is a spaceship. Oh man. Oh man, this is really happening." Troy stepped forward, her expression gentle. "Peter, I can sense your emotions. You're overwhelmed, frightened, but you're not dangerous, are you?" He looked at her, and something in his eyes, guilt, responsibility, and old pain, made Picard think of a soldier who'd seen too much combat. "Counselor, I've been asking myself that question for 10 years, Peter said quietly. "I have power. More power than any person should have. And I've tried, God, I've tried to use it responsibly. But I don't know the rules here. I don't know your laws, your customs, if there are people who need help or—" He stopped himself, shaking his head. Sorry, I'm rambling. It's a stress thing." "You mentioned responsibility," Picard said, studying the strange young man. "That's an unusual word for someone with your abilities to emphasize." "With great power comes great responsibility," Peter replied. It sounded like a mantra, something repeated so many times it had become part of his identity. "My uncle taught me that. Right before I got him killed." The raw pain in those words silenced the corridor. Even Worf lowered his phaser slightly. Picard made a decision. "Mr. Parker, I think we have a great deal to discuss. But first, let's get you to sickbay. Dr. Crusher will want to examine you, ensure you weren't harmed by your passage through the dimensional breach. Data, seal this section, and have engineering teams analyze the molecular adhesion traces. I want to understand how Mr. Parker was clinging to that ceiling. And someone contact Ganan. I suspect our guest could use a drink and a friendly ear." Peter Parker nodded slowly. "Thank you, Captain. I don't know what's happening, but I know one thing. If I'm here, if I came through that rift for a reason—" His spider sense tingled faintly, a whisper of danger somewhere in the vast darkness between stars. "Then something's coming, something bad, and I need to be ready to stop it." As they escorted Spider-Man to sickbay, none of them knew how right he was. The anomaly that brought him here had been detected by others. Factions who saw in Peter Parker not a frightened young man, but an opportunity, an asset, a weapon. The Federation was about to learn what it meant when someone with power chose to act instead of observe. And Peter Parker was about to discover that in a universe governed by the Prime Directive, responsibility looked very different than swinging through the streets of Queens, saving everyone he could. The awakening had begun. If you want to see more characters enter the Star Trek universe, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. Live long and prosper. Sickbay on the Enterprise-D was a testament to Federation medical science. Clean, efficient, designed to diagnose and treat thousands of species from across the galaxy. Dr. Beverly Crusher had seen many things in her years as chief medical officer. Klingon anatomy, Vulcan physiology, even the crystalline structure of Horta biology. But as she ran her medical tricorder over Peter Parker for the third time, she found herself confronting something that shouldn't exist. "This is impossible," she muttered, adjusting the tricorder settings again. Peter sat on the biobed, maskless now, his suit's top half peeled down to his waist, revealing a lean athletic build that the sensors insisted was capable of lifting approximately 20 tons. He fidgeted nervously, his hazel eyes tracking every movement in sickbay with unnatural alertness. "Yeah, I get that a lot. The impossible thing." Beverly looked up at him. "Your muscle fibers are denser than any human I've ever examined, but they don't show the structural damage that should result from that kind of stress. Your bones are reinforced with a calcium carbonate hybrid that resembles spider silk at the molecular level. And these glands in your wrists," she paused, scanning the small organic structures. "They're producing a protein-based fluid that your tricorder reading suggests is stronger than titanium when it solidifies." "Web fluid," Peter said. "Well, not anymore. These are empty." He touched the mechanical web shooter strapped to his wrists. "I build these myself. Mechanical delivery system for a chemical compound I developed in high school. The organic glands came later, after the spider bite changed me. But I still prefer the shooters. More control." Data stood nearby, his yellow eyes fixed on Peter with undisguised fascination. "You designed a material stronger than titanium while in secondary education?" "I had a lot of free time," Peter said with a self-deprecating smile. "And a lot of motivation. When you can stick to walls and lift cars, you need a way to get around fast. Web slinging seemed practical." "Practical," Data repeated, as if testing the word. "Captain, Mr. Parker's intellectual capacity may be as remarkable as his physical abilities. The chemical formula he describes would require advanced knowledge of organic chemistry, polymer science, and materials engineering." Picard stood at the entrance to the surgical bay, arms folded, listening carefully. Beside him, Counselor Troy watched Peter with that peculiar intensity she reserved for patients whose emotional landscapes troubled her. "There's something he's not telling us, Captain. Beneath the humor and the self-deprecation, there's pain, old wounds that haven't healed." "We all have those, Counselor," Picard said quietly. Beverly completed her scans and set the tricorder aside. "Physically, you're in excellent health, Mr. Parker. Better than excellent, actually. Your accelerated metabolism means you heal faster than normal humans. I'd estimate a broken bone would mend in days rather than weeks. Your enhanced immune system has already adapted to the Enterprise's environmental microbes. But I have concerns." Peter's spider sense tingled faintly. Not danger, but attention. "What kind of concerns?" "Your neurological activity is extraordinary. The tricorder detects constant low-level precognitive processing. Your brain is running probability calculations thousands of times per second, predicting threats before they occur. It's creating a baseline stress response that never fully deactivates." Beverly's expression softened. "Peter, your body thinks it's always in danger. You must be exhausted." "It's called spider sense," Peter said, looking away. "It warns me when something bad is about to happen. Saved my life more times than I can count. But yeah, Doctor, it doesn't have an off switch." The door to sickbay hissed open. Worf entered, his massive frame filling the doorway, his Klingon features set in a scowl. Behind him came Lieutenant Commander Geordi LaForge, his visor scanning the electromagnetic spectrum invisible to normal human eyes. "Captain, we have completed the analysis of Deck 12. Report. The molecular adhesion patterns are unlike anything in our database," Geordi said, his voice carrying the excitement of an engineer confronting an unsolvable puzzle. Parker wasn't using magnetic boots or gravity manipulation. His hands and feet were generating van der Waals forces at a scale that should require massive energy expenditure. But the biosigns show no corresponding power draw. It's like his cells just decide to stick to things. Peter raised a hand. "If it helps, I don't really understand it either." I just kind of think about sticking, and I stick. Think about letting go, and I let go. Telekinesis, Data suggested. No, it's physical contact, Beverly interjected. The molecular bonding requires direct skin contact with the surface. It's biological, not psionic. Worf stepped closer to Peter, his dark eyes studying the young man with Warrior's assessment. These abilities make you a formidable combatant. How did you acquire them? Peter met the Klingon's gaze without flinching. A small thing, but Picard noted it. Most people found Worf intimidating on first meeting. Radioactive spider bite. I was 15, on a school field trip to a science exhibition. The spider had been exposed to radiation in some kind of experiment. It bit me and died. Next morning I woke up stuck to my ceiling, stronger than any human should be, and with this sense screaming at me about danger. A spider bite, Worf said flatly. You expect us to believe? I don't expect anything, Commander, Peter interrupted, and there was steel beneath the friendly tone. I'm telling you what happened. Whether you believe it is your choice, but I've been doing this for 10 years. I've fought gods, monsters, and everything in between. I've died and come back. I've lost people I loved because I wasn't fast enough, wasn't strong enough, wasn't there when they needed me. His hands clenched into fists. So yeah, a radioactive spider bite. Ridiculous, right? But it's my ridiculous, and I've learned to live with it. Silence fell over sickbay. Troy's eyes glistened. You blame yourself for their deaths. Every day, Peter said simply. Picard stepped forward, his command presence filling the room. Mr. Parker, you've been through an ordeal. You've been torn from your universe, separated from everything you know. I understand that you feel responsible for. With respect, Captain, you don't understand. Peter slid off the biobed, standing to face Picard directly. He was shorter than the captain, younger, but something in his posture suggested a man who'd stood against worse than a Starfleet officer's scrutiny. In my world, when someone with power sees a crime and does nothing, they're complicit. When I see someone in danger and I have the ability to help, I help. That's not negotiable. The Prime Directive, Picard began. I don't know what that is, Peter said, but if it's a rule that says, watch people suffer because interfering is inconvenient, then we're going to have a problem, Captain. Worf's hand moved instinctively toward his phaser. Data's positronic brain calculated combat probabilities. Beverly tensed, but Picard simply smiled. A thin, appreciative smile of a man recognizing a kindred spirit, even one who disagreed with him. The Prime Directive, Mr. Parker, is Starfleet's General Order Number 1. It forbids us from interfering in the natural development of pre-warp civilizations. It exists to prevent us from imposing our values, our technology, our entire way of life on species who haven't asked for our intervention. It is, in many ways, the foundation of the Federation. Peter absorbed this, his enhanced mind processing implications. So if you find a planet where people are dying from a disease you could cure, you just leave. If they haven't developed warp technology, haven't proven they're ready for contact with interstellar civilization, then yes, we observe, we document, but we do not interfere. That's insane. That's responsibility on a cosmic scale, Picard countered. You spoke of power and responsibility, Mr. Parker. The Federation has the power to reshape entire worlds. We could play God to 1,000 pre-warp civilizations. The Prime Directive is our acknowledgement that having power doesn't give us the right to use it however we see fit. Peter opened his mouth to respond, but his spider sense suddenly screamed, a sharp, urgent warning that sent him diving sideways just as the sickbay's biobed exploded in a shower of sparks. Alarms blared throughout the ship. Red alert klaxons wailed. Riker's voice cut through the chaos. Captain to the bridge. We're being scanned by an unknown vessel. Romulan configuration, but the energy signature is wrong. They're targeting our position specifically. Peter was already moving toward the door, pulling his mask back on with practiced efficiency. Captain, whatever just scanned you, my spider sense says it's very, very bad news. Picard tapped his comm badge. All hands to battle stations. Mr. Parker, you're with me. It seems your arrival has attracted unwanted attention. As they ran for the turbo lift, Peter's mind raced. He'd been in this universe less than an hour, and already people were shooting at him. Some things, it seemed, were universal. What he didn't know was that the scanning vessel wasn't Romulan at all. It was Section 31, the Federation's Black Ops Division, an organization that existed in the shadows, doing the dirty work that the noble Prime Directive supposedly made unnecessary. And they had just found something they wanted very, very badly. The bridge of the Enterprise erupted in controlled chaos as Picard and Peter emerged from the turbolift. Officers moved with practiced efficiency, their hands dancing across LCAR's panels while the viewscreen displayed a vessel that sent ice through the captain's veins. The ship was sleek, predatory, its hull configuration suggesting Romulan design philosophy, but the energy emissions were wrong, too sophisticated, too carefully masked. "Report!" Picard commanded, striding to his command chair. Riker stood from the captain's seat, yielding it with military precision. "Unknown vessel decloaked 30 seconds ago at extreme sensor range. They performed a focused scan directly on sickbay, then recloaked before we could get a weapons lock." "Romulan?" Picard asked. "No, sir." Data's fingers flew across his console. "The cloak technology bears Romulan signatures, but the subspace distortion pattern is too refined. This vessel's cloaking device is significantly more advanced than standard Romulan implementations. Additionally, I am detecting residual tachyon emissions consistent with Federation sensor technology." Worf's growl was low and dangerous. "Federation sensors on a cloaked vessel. Section 31. The name hung in the air like a curse. Peter, standing awkwardly near the turbolift in his red and blue suit, watched the crew's reactions with his enhanced senses. Heartbeats elevated. Breathing patterns shifted. Whatever Section 31 was, these people feared it, or despised it. "What's Section 31? He asked. Picard's jaw tightened. "An organization that claims to protect the Federation by operating outside its laws. They have no official standing, no oversight, no accountability. They are, in essence, everything the Federation stands against." "Spies," Peter said flatly. "Black ops." "Worse," Troy said from her position. "They believe the ends justify any means. They've committed genocide, orchestrated assassinations, violated the Prime Directive repeatedly, all in the name of Federation security." Peter's spider sense pulsed with low-grade warning. "And they just scanned me." "Indeed," Data confirmed. "The scan was highly focused, Mr. Parker. They were examining your unique biological signatures. I estimate they now possess complete data on your cellular structure, metabolic processes, and enhanced abilities." "Captain, they're hailing us," Worf announced, surprise evident in his tone. "Audio only." On screen, the view screen shimmered, but no image appeared. Instead, a voice, smooth, cultured, vaguely masculine, filled the bridge. "Captain Picard, how fortuitous to find you at the neutral zone, and with such an interesting passenger." "Identify yourself," Picard demanded. "Names are irrelevant, Captain. What matters is that your ship is carrying a biological anomaly that poses a significant security risk to the Federation. We require you to transfer custody of Peter Parker immediately." Peter felt every eye on the bridge turned toward him, his hands clenched into fists. "Yeah, that's not happening." "Mr. Parker," the voice continued, and there was something unsettling in how it seemed to address him directly, despite the audio-only transmission. "We've analyzed the data from our scan. Your abilities are extraordinary. Superhuman strength, precognitive danger sense, enhanced agility, wall-crawling capabilities derived from arachnid proteins integrated into human DNA. You are effectively the result of genetic augmentation on a scale that would violate Federation law if it had been performed intentionally." "It wasn't intentional," Peter shot back. "It was an accident. Nevertheless, you represent a threat. More importantly, you represent an opportunity. The genetic modifications that grant you these abilities could revolutionize Federation defensive capabilities. Imagine an entire battalion of enhanced soldiers with your strength, your reflexes, your danger sense. The Dominion would never threaten us again. The Borg adapt to everything," Picard interrupted coldly. "You know this. What you're suggesting is madness." "What I'm suggesting is survival, Captain. The Federation faces existential threats on multiple fronts. We cannot afford to let moral squeamishness prevent us from using every advantage. The voice paused. Mr. Parker will be transferred to our custody within the hour. This is not a request. The transmission cut off. Peter's mind raced, processing implications with the enhanced cognition that came with his powers. They want to clone me, or dissect me, figure out how my abilities work and mass-produce them. An accurate assessment, Data agreed. Section 31 has demonstrated willingness to engage in unethical scientific experimentation when they believe Federation's security is at stake. Captain, Geordi called from engineering, I'm detecting a second vessel, same configuration as the first, approaching from heading Mark 215. They're not even trying to hide their tachyon signatures anymore. They're showing us their strength, Riker observed, trying to intimidate us into compliance. Picard stood, his voice carrying the authority of a man who defied Q himself. Mr. Worf, raise shields, charge phasers, but do not lock weapons. Geordi, I want a tachyon detection grid active. If more Section 31 vessels are out there, I want to know about it. Aye, Captain. Peter stepped forward. Captain Picard, I appreciate that you're trying to protect me, but I don't want anyone getting hurt because of me. If these Section 31 people are as dangerous as you say, Mr. Parker, Picard said firmly, you are under the protection of the Federation and this crew. I will not hand you over to an organization that would treat you as a laboratory specimen. That is final. The words settled something in Peter's chest. Gratitude mixed with the old familiar guilt. People protecting him. People putting themselves at risk for his sake. It was Gwen Stacy all over again. It was Uncle Ben. It was every friend, every loved one who'd paid the price for knowing Spider-Man. His spider sense suddenly screamed. Down! Peter yelled, his precognitive warning faster than sensors could track. He launched himself across the bridge in a superhuman leap, tackling Data and Picard to the deck as the view screen exploded in a shower of sparks. The entire ship shuddered as something slammed into the shields. Not weapons fire, but a focused energy beam designed to overload specific systems. Direct hit to primary sensor array, Worf reported, pulling himself up from where he'd instinctively ducked. Shields holding at 87%. They're not trying to destroy us. They're trying to blind us. They're creating an opening, Riker realized, for a boarding party. Peter was already on his feet, helping Picard up with strength that made the captain stumble. Sorry for the tackle, but my spider sense doesn't give me time for polite warnings. Where would they board? Transporter room, cargo bay, or they might try to beam directly onto the bridge, Worf said, his tactical mind already calculating. Security teams are moving to defensive positions. Captain, Data said, brushing himself off with android dignity. Mr. Parker's precognitive ability detected the attack 1.3 seconds before our sensors registered the energy buildup. That is a significant tactical advantage. It's not tactical, Peter corrected. It's survival. And right now it's telling me that something very bad is about to happen in... He paused, his enhanced senses tracking the tingling intensifying. Deck 8, Section 12, near the cargo bay. That's impossible, Geordi said. Sensors show no transporter activity. The ship shuddered again. Alarms wailed. Security team to Deck 8, Worf commanded. Intruder alert. Captain, with your permission, I will lead the response. Granted, Mr. Parker. I'm going with him, Peter said, already moving toward the turbolift. You are a civilian. Captain, with respect, I'm the only person on this ship who can sense where the bad guys are before they shoot. Your security team needs me. Peter looked back at Picard, and despite the mask, something earnest shone through. I'm not asking permission. I'm telling you I'm going to help. Because that's what I do. Picard studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Mr. Worf, take Mr. Parker with you, but be advised, Section 31 operatives are highly trained and utterly ruthless. They will kill to achieve their objectives. So will I, Worf promised, if they threaten this ship. Peter followed the Klingon into the turbolift, his mind already running calculations. Tight corridors, unknown weapons technology, enemies who wanted to capture him alive, but would happily kill anyone protecting him. It was just like fighting the Sinister Six, except in space. As the turbolift descended, Worf glanced at the masked figure beside him. You fight with honor? I fight to keep people alive, Peter replied. That honor enough for you? A ghost of a smile crossed Worf's features. It will suffice. The doors opened onto Deck 8, and Peter's spider sense exploded with warning. 3 figures in black tactical gear materialized from active camouflage, weapons already trained on them. But Peter was faster. 10 years of fighting for his life had made him faster than almost anything human. He webbed the first operative's weapon, yanking it away even as he wall-crawled across the corridor ceiling, dodging disruptor fire that scorched the bulkhead where he'd been standing. Worf roared, a pure Klingon battle cry, and charged the second operative with strength that matched Peter's own. The corridor erupted into chaos, and in the shadows, more Section 31 agents watched, analyzed, and reported back to their superiors. The enhanced human was everything they'd hoped for and more. The only question was how many Enterprise crew members would have to die before they acquired him. The corridor on Deck 8 became a war zone in the span of 3 heartbeats. Peter's enhanced reflexes turned the world into slow motion. He saw the disruptor bolts as they left the barrels, tracked their trajectory, calculated angles of deflection. His body moved before his conscious mind could process. A decade of street-level combat honed into pure instinct. He fired webbing at the ceiling, yanked himself up and over the energy discharge, then planted both feet into the chest of the nearest Section 31 operative, with enough force to send the agent crashing through a wall panel. Sparks erupted from severed power conduits. The operative groaned, struggling to rise, but Peter webbed him to the deck in a cocoon of impossibly strong adhesive. Stay down, Peter said. I don't want to hurt you. The second operative barely had time to redirect his weapon before Worf's massive fist connected with his jaw. The Klingon moved with brutal efficiency, disarming his opponent and delivering a strike that would have killed a human. The Section 31 agent crumpled, unconscious but alive. Worf had shown restraint, which Peter found surprisingly reassuring. The third operative was smarter. He activated a personal shield generator, blue energy crackling around him as he retreated toward the cargo bay. Subject Parker, he called out, his voice distorted by helmet modulation. Section 31 is offering you a choice. Come willingly, assist us in replicating your abilities, and we ensure the Enterprise suffers no casualties. Resist, and we will be forced to take more aggressive measures. Peter's spider sense screamed. Not from the operative in front of him, from behind. He spun, firing webbing blindly, and caught a fourth agent who'd been decloaking directly behind Worf. The webbing encased the agent's weapon, rendering it useless. How many of you are there? Peter demanded. Enough, the shielded operative replied. He tapped his wrist device. Alpha Team, execute Contingency 3. The Enterprise shuddered. Alarms blared throughout Deck 8. Geordi's voice cut through the ship-wide comm. Captain, we've got a problem. They've uploaded some kind of viral program into our computer core. It's targeting life support systems on occupied decks. Peter's enhanced mind made the connection instantly. They're going to suffocate the crew. Force you to choose between letting people die and handing me over. Affirmative, the operative said calmly. You have 5 minutes before oxygen levels reach critical thresholds on decks 4, 6, and 9. Approximately 473 personnel will begin experiencing hypoxia. In 7 minutes, permanent brain damage begins. Your choice, Subject Parker. Worf's comm badge chirped. Picard's voice was ice-cold fury. Mr. Worf, status? We have engaged Section 31 operatives, Captain. They have compromised life support. Data is attempting to counter their viral program, but it's adapting faster than he can isolate it. Mr. Parker, I'm not going with them, Captain, Peter interrupted, his voice hard. There has to be another way. His spider sense pulsed, not with danger, but with possibility. 10 years of being Spider-Man had taught him to trust that sense, to follow its subtle guidance. It was telling him something now, a pattern in the ship's systems, a weakness in the Section 31 operative's shield, a connection he couldn't quite articulate but knew with bone-deep certainty. Data, Peter called through the comm, the viral program they uploaded. Does it require a transmission signal to maintain itself? A pause. Affirmative. The program is receiving constant updates from an external source. allowing it to adapt to our countermeasures. If we could locate and sever that transmission, the shielded guy's wrist device, Peter said. It's transmitting. I can feel it. He couldn't explain how he knew, but his spider sense was screaming at him that the device was the key. Mr. Parker, Data's voice carried newfound excitement. If you are correct, destroying that transmission device would allow me to purge the viral program within seconds. The Section 31 operative's posture shifted, subtle, but Peter's enhanced perception caught it. Confirmation. You won't reach me before the crew starts dying, the operative said. 4 minutes, 30 seconds. Peter looked at Worf. The Klingon's dark eyes met his through the mask, and something passed between them. Warrior recognizing warrior, regardless of species or origin. Worf, can you break that shield? Negative. Personal shield generators of that sophistication can withstand phaser fire and physical impacts up to... Can you distract him for 3 seconds? A predatory smile crossed Worf's face. Yes. Then let's dance. Worf charged with a roar that echoed through the corridor. A full Klingon battle charge that would have sent most opponents fleeing. The Section 31 operative stood his ground, confident in his shield's protection. He raised his weapon, targeting the Klingon with lethal intent. Peter moved. He didn't run at the operative. He ran up the wall, his molecular adhesion defying gravity as he sprinted across the vertical surface, then transitioned to the ceiling. The operative's helmet tracked him, weapon swiveling, but Peter was already diving, building momentum, his body a missile aimed at the one thing the shield couldn't fully protect, the transmission device on the operative's wrist. His spider sense mapped the trajectory perfectly. He fired webbing mid-dive, not at the operative, but at an exposed power conduit 10 meters down the corridor. The web line caught, and Peter used it to redirect his momentum at the last possible second, swinging around the operative in an arc that brought him past the shield's energy field at an angle the generator couldn't compensate for. His hands shot out, fingers closing around the wrist device with superhuman strength. He ripped it free, crushed it in his fist, and the device sparked and died as Peter completed his swing and landed on the far wall, adhering instantly. Data, now! Purging viral program, Data's voice was triumphant. Isolation successful. Life support returning to normal parameters across all affected decks. The Section 31 operative stood motionless for a moment, processing failure. Then he tapped his helmet. All teams withdraw. Subject acquisition unsuccessful. Recommend escalation to Protocol 7. Protocol 7? Worf demanded. What is... The operative vanished in a transporter beam. So did his unconscious colleagues, snatched away before Worf could stop them. Within seconds, the corridor was empty save for Peter's webbing and the scorch marks from disruptor fire. Peter dropped from the wall, landing beside Worf. His spider sense had quieted to its normal background hum. What's Protocol 7? I do not know, Worf admitted, tapping his comm badge. Captain, the operatives have withdrawn. Deck 8 is secure. Acknowledged. Return to the bridge immediately. We're detecting multiple vessels decloaking at the edge of sensor range. It appears Section 31 has decided subtlety is no longer necessary. Back on the bridge, the view screen displayed a sight that made Peter's enhanced danger sense scream. 6 ships, sleek, deadly, arranged in a formation that suggested coordination and lethal intent. Their weapons were charged, their shields were raised, and every sensor on the Enterprise confirmed they were targeting the ship with enough firepower to vaporize it. Picard stood at the center of the bridge, hands clasped behind his back, his posture radiating calm authority, despite the impossible odds. Hail them! The same smooth voice from before filled the bridge. Captain Picard, you've proven more resourceful than anticipated. However, the situation has changed. You are outgunned, outmatched, and in violation of Federation security protocols by harboring a biological anomaly. Surrender, Peter Parker, or we will be forced to disable your vessel and take him by force. You would fire on a Federation starship? Picard's voice was dangerously quiet. You would kill 700 Starfleet officers to acquire one individual? We would do whatever is necessary to protect the Federation from external threats. Mr. Parker's abilities, uncontrolled and unregulated, represent such a threat. Moreover, his genetic structure offers unprecedented opportunities for defensive enhancement. Section 31 has determined that his acquisition serves the greater good. Peter stepped forward, pulling off his mask so they could see his face. My name is Peter Parker. I'm not a biological anomaly or an opportunity. I'm a person. And I'm telling you right now, if you think I'm going to let you turn me into a science experiment so you can create an army of super soldiers, you're insane. Your consent is not required. Then you'll have to kill me, Peter said flatly. Because I've fought too long and too hard to let someone weaponize my DNA. I've seen what happens when people try to replicate my powers. Green Goblin, Dr. Octopus, Venom. It never ends well. So here's my offer. Leave or come at me with everything you've got. But know this, I'm not going quietly. Silence hung over the bridge. Even the Section 31 voice seemed to pause, recalculating. Then Picard spoke, his voice carrying the weight of moral authority. Section 31, you claim to protect the Federation, but the Federation was built on principles, respect for individual rights, the rule of law, the belief that we are defined not by our power, but by how we choose to use it. Mr. Parker embodies those principles more fully than you ever have. He fights to protect the innocent. He refuses to let his abilities corrupt him. He is, in every meaningful sense, what we aspire to be. Philosophical debate is irrelevant, Captain. You have 30 seconds to comply. Picard looked at Peter, and in that moment, the young man from Queen saw something he recognized. The burden of command, the weight of choosing between impossible options, the determination to do what was right even when the cost was unbearable. Mr. Parker, Picard said quietly, what would you have me do? Peter's spider sense pulsed. Not danger, not yet, but potential, a choice point, a moment where the universe balanced on the edge of becoming something different. Captain, he said, in my world I learned that sometimes you can't win by fighting. Sometimes you win by showing people there's another way. So here's what I'm thinking. We're at the neutral zone, right? Near Romulan space? Data's head tilted. Correct. The neutral zone border is approximately 20,000 kilometers from our current position. A smile crossed Peter's face. Not the friendly neighborhood smile, but the smile of someone who'd learned to think 3 moves ahead while swinging through Manhattan at terminal velocity. And Section 31 is operating illegally, without Starfleet oversight, with stolen technology, preparing to fire on a Federation starship. What happens if we call the Romulans and tell them there's a rogue Federation element violating the neutral zone? Riker's eyes widened. The Romulans would investigate, and if they found Section 31 operating cloaked vessels in prohibited space, it would be an interstellar incident, Picard finished, and now he was smiling too. One that would force Section 31's existence into the open. The very thing they've avoided for decades. You're bluffing, the Section 31 voice said, but now there was uncertainty. The Romulans are as likely to destroy you as help you. Perhaps, Picard agreed, but you'll be exposed. Your ships, your operations, your violations of Federation law, all documented, all transmitted to Romulan High Command and Starfleet intelligence simultaneously. Your shadow war ends today. Peter's spider sense quieted. The danger was receding, not eliminated, but diminishing. Section 31 was calculating, weighing risks and rewards. Captain Picard, the voice said finally, this conversation is not over. Subject Parker remains a security risk, and Section 31 does not abandon its objectives. We will acquire him. Eventually. The 6 ships vanished, cloaking in perfect synchronization. The bridge released a collective breath. Peter sagged slightly, adrenaline draining from his system. Did that just work? For now, Picard said. But they meant what they said. They will return. Peter pulled his mask back on, the familiar weight settling over his face like armor. Let them. I've been dealing with people who want to kill me since I was 15. At least in space, there's more room to web sling. Troy laughed, an unexpected sound that broke the tension. Soon others joined in, even Worf managing something that might have been a chuckle. But Picard remained serious. Mr. Parker, I believe we need to have a very long conversation about responsibility, power, and what it means to live in a universe governed by rules you disagree with. Yeah, Peter said, looking out at the stars through the view screen. I think we do. What neither of them knew was that the Section 31 ships hadn't truly left. They'd simply fallen back, waiting, watching, and preparing Protocol 7, a contingency that would force Peter Parker to make the hardest choice of his life. And somewhere in the darkness, a Romulan warbird had detected the entire encounter, its sensors recording everything, its commander already composing a report that would change the political landscape of the Alpha Quadrant. The awakening was accelerating. 10 Forward was quieter than usual. The Enterprise's social hub, normally filled with crew members unwinding after their shifts, had emptied considerably after word spread about the Section 31 encounter. Those who remained spoke in hushed tones, casting occasional glances toward the figure sitting alone at the bar. Peter Parker had removed his mask, allowing himself the small luxury of being just Peter for a moment. His hazel eyes stared into a glass of something Guinan had called Saurian brandy, though he hadn't taken a sip. The amber liquid reflected the stars beyond the windows, infinite, cold, and utterly indifferent to the problems of one displaced human. Not a drinker? Guinan's voice was warm, tinged with the wisdom of someone who'd lived far longer than her appearance suggested. The El-Orian woman moved with quiet grace, her elaborate hat casting shadows across her ageless face. I learned early that enhanced metabolism and alcohol don't mix well, Peter said. Took half a bottle of whiskey to feel anything, and the hangover lasted about 10 minutes. Wasn't worth it. He pushed the glass away. Besides, I need to think clearly. Everything's moving too fast. Guinan collected the glass, replacing it with water. You've been in this universe for 6 hours. You've survived a Section 31 extraction attempt, saved nearly 500 crew members from suffocation, and earned the respect of Worf, which, trust me, is no small feat. I'd say you're handling it remarkably well. Am I? Peter's hands clenched on the bar. I don't even know how I got here. One second I'm fighting Norman Osborn above Times Square. The next I'm falling through some kind of rainbow tunnel, and then I'm on a starship that shouldn't exist. What if I can't get back? What if... He stopped himself, the old guilt rising. What if Aunt May thinks I'm dead? What if my friends need me and I'm not there? Those are fair questions, Guinan said gently. But perhaps the better question is, why are you here? In my experience, when someone crosses dimensional barriers, it's rarely random. The universe has a way of putting people where they're needed. Before Peter could respond, the turbolift doors opened. Captain Picard entered, accompanied by Data and Counselor Troy. The android carried a P-ad, his yellow eyes fixed on Data streaming across its surface. Picard spotted Peter and approached, his expression grave. Mr. Parker, may we join you? Peter gestured to the empty seats. It's your ship, Captain. They settled around a table near the windows, the stars of the neutral zone glittering beyond. Picard folded his hands, studying Peter with that penetrating gaze that seemed to see through masks, literal and metaphorical. We've been analyzing the dimensional breach that brought you here, Picard began. Data, if you would. Data activated the PADD, projecting a holographic display above the table. The rift appeared in miniature, its chaotic energy patterns swirling in impossible colors. The anomaly was not natural, Mr. Parker. Initial analysis suggested random quantum fluctuations, but deeper examination reveals deliberate manipulation. Someone or something opened that portal intentionally. Peter's spider sense tingled faintly. Someone brought me here on purpose? Who? Why? Unknown, Data admitted. However, the energy signature bears similarities to technology we have encountered before, specifically technology associated with the Q continuum. Q, Picard said, and his tone carried both respect and exasperation. An omnipotent being who has appointed himself humanity's judge. He has repeatedly tested us, challenged us, forced us to confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves. The captain's eyes narrowed. If Q brought you here, it was for a reason. He doesn't act randomly. Troy leaned forward, her empathic senses focused on Peter. The Q test us because they believe we have potential. If one of them brought you to our universe, they saw something in you, or in us, that warranted intervention. Great, Peter muttered. So I'm part of some cosmic experiment. That's just perfect. Welcome to the Enterprise, Guinan said dryly from the bar. That's Tuesday for us. Despite everything, Peter laughed. It was a short, sharp sound, but genuine. You people are insane. You know that, right? You fly around space having philosophical debates with omnipotent beings and fighting shadow organizations, and you act like it's normal. It is normal, Picard said. For us. But I understand your perspective, Mr. Parker. You come from a universe where the extraordinary is rare, where individuals with power are anomalies. Here, the extraordinary is simply part of existence. We encounter new species, new technologies, new forms of consciousness. What remains constant is how we choose to respond to these encounters. The Prime Directive, Peter said. Among other principles, yes. Peter stood, moving to the window, his reflection ghosting against the stars. Captain, I need you to understand something. Where I come from, I had a normal life once. Uncle Ben and Aunt May raised me after my parents died. I was a science nerd, bullied at school, couldn't talk to girls without stammering. Then I got bitten by that spider, and everything changed. His hand pressed against the transparent aluminum, and even that gentle touch left molecular adhesion traces. At first, I used my powers selfishly. I wanted money, recognition, to be somebody special. I had the chance to stop a criminal, a thief running past me, and I let him go. Told myself it wasn't my problem. His voice cracked. That same man shot Uncle Ben 3 days later, killed him over $87. Troy's eyes glistened with empathic tears. She felt the wound in Peter's psyche, raw and bleeding, despite the years that had passed. So I learned, Peter continued, his voice steadier now, I learned that when you have power and you don't use it to help people, you're responsible for what happens. Every mugger I stop, every fire I pull someone from, every time I swing into danger, it's not because I want to, it's because I have to. Because if I don't, who will? And if someone dies because I wasn't there, he turned to face them. That's on me. A heavy burden, Picard observed. It's my burden, Peter said, and I'm not asking you to agree with it. But I need you to understand that I can't just stand by and watch people suffer when I have the ability to help. I don't care if it violates your Prime Directive. I don't care if it's against regulations. If someone needs help, I help them. That's not negotiable. Silence fell across 10 forward. The few remaining crew members had stopped pretending not to listen. This was a fundamental clash of philosophies, the Federation's calculated non-interference versus one man's absolute commitment to intervention. Data broke the silence, his positronic brain processing implications with inhuman speed. Captain, Mr. Parker's ethical framework presents an interesting challenge to Prime Directive philosophy. He argues that power creates obligation, that the ability to help generates moral responsibility to act. The Prime Directive argues the opposite, that power creates the temptation to interfere and must therefore be constrained by rules. Both positions have merit, Troy added, and both have led to tragedy when taken to extremes. Picard stood, moving to join Peter at the window. For a long moment, they stood side by side. Two men separated by universes but united by the burden of command, the terrible weight of choosing who lives and who dies. Mr. Parker, Picard said finally, I have watched civilizations destroy themselves because we interfered too much. I have also watched civilizations suffer because we interfered too little. The Prime Directive is not perfect. It is merely our attempt to navigate the impossible moral landscape of having power over others. He met Peter's eyes. But I will tell you this. I would rather have you on my ship, questioning our principles and challenging our assumptions, than have another officer who follows orders without thinking. So what happens now? Peter asked. Now, Picard said, we try to find a way to return you to your universe. Data, how long before we can safely reopen the dimensional breach? Problematic, Captain. The rift has collapsed. Recreating it would require energy expenditures beyond the Enterprise's capabilities. We would need... The ship suddenly shuddered. Red alert klaxons blared. Riker's voice cut through the comm. Captain to the bridge. Romulan warbird decloaking directly ahead. They're hailing us. Picard and Peter exchanged glances. Our bluff, Peter said, was apparently taken seriously, Picard finished. Mr. Parker, you're about to meet the Romulan Star Empire. I suggest you put your mask back on. Appearances matter in diplomacy. They rushed to the bridge, Peter pulling his mask on with practiced efficiency. The view screen displayed a vessel that looked like a predatory bird. Elegant, deadly, the Romulan warbird hanging in space with wings that seemed to promise violence. A figure appeared on screen, female, with severe features and the distinctive V-shaped ridge of Romulan heritage. Her uniform was military, her bearing suggested command, and her eyes held the calculating intelligence of someone who'd survived Romulan politics long enough to captain a warbird. I am Commander Torith of the warbird Valdor, she said, her voice carrying authority and thinly veiled contempt. Captain Picard, we detected unusual subspace transmissions originating from your vessel 14 minutes ago. Transmissions that suggested Federation vessels operating illegally within the neutral zone. Her eyes narrowed. Explain. Picard clasped his hands behind his back. Commander Torith, the Enterprise encountered rogue Federation elements operating cloaked vessels in violation of treaty agreements. We considered it prudent to document their presence. Rogue elements! Toreth's expression suggested she found this explanation amusing. How convenient. The Federation claims a shadow organization exists whenever its ships are caught where they shouldn't be. She leaned forward. However, our sensors did detect multiple cloaked vessels in this region, vessels with Federation energy signatures. Either your rogue elements are real, or Starfleet has become remarkably brazen. I assure you, Commander, Section 31 operates without Starfleet sanction. Section 31. Torith repeated the name as if tasting it. The Tal Shiar has suspected their existence for years. To have confirmation, she smiled, sharp and predatory. The Romulan Senate will be very interested in this information. Peter's spider sense pulsed. Something was wrong. Torith's smile was too satisfied, her posture too relaxed. She'd gotten more than she came for, and that meant... However, Torith continued, there is another matter. Our sensors detected an unusual biological signature aboard your vessel. Something that does not match any known Federation species. Her eyes locked onto Peter, and he felt the weight of her scrutiny even through the view screen. Would you care to explain why the Enterprise is carrying what appears to be a genetically modified human? Picard's jaw tightened imperceptibly. The individual you detected is a passenger under Federation protection. A passenger who survived a dimensional breach. A passenger who possesses abilities that violate Federation genetic augmentation laws. A passenger who, according to our intelligence analysis, represents significant military value. Torith's smile widened. The Romulan Star Empire formally requests that you turn over this individual for questioning. Failure to comply will be interpreted as harboring a strategic weapon in violation of treaty agreements. Peter stepped forward, drawing every eye on both bridges. Commander, with all due respect, I'm not a weapon. I'm not even from your universe. I'm just trying to get home. Torith studied him with the intensity of a scientist examining a fascinating specimen. You are Spider-Man. We've analyzed the Section 31 transmissions. We know what you can do. She gestured off-screen, and the view screen split. The second image showed a Romulan laboratory, sterile, clinical, filled with technology that looked disturbingly medical. Come aboard the Valdor voluntarily, Torith said, and we will study your abilities, determine their origin, and possibly help you return to your universe. Refuse, and we will be forced to assume you are a Federation bioweapon. The neutral zone will become significantly less neutral. Peter's spider sense screamed. Choice point. Dimensional crossroads. Whatever he decided next would ripple across the entire quadrant. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, Q watched with interest, wondering if the human from another reality would pass the test or fail spectacularly. The bridge of the Enterprise fell silent, the tension so thick it seemed to distort the air itself. Peter stood before the view screen, his masked face inscrutable, while Commander Torith waited with the patience of a predator who knew its prey had nowhere to run. Behind him, the bridge crew watched, Picard with his diplomat's mask firmly in place, Worf's hand hovering near weapons controls, data calculating probabilities at superhuman speed. Peter's spider sense wasn't screaming danger anymore. It was whispering possibilities, showing him branching paths outcomes that spiraled in directions he couldn't fully comprehend. This wasn't a fight he could win with his fists or his webs. This was politics, strategy, the kind of chess game where people died because of words left unsaid or said too carelessly. "Commander Toreth," Peter said, his voice steady despite the fear churning in his gut. "I appreciate the offer. Really, I do. But I've seen enough laboratories in my time to know that voluntary study is usually code for, we're going to dissect you and see what makes you tick. So here's my counteroffer." "No." Toreth's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Respect, perhaps, or merely recalculation. "You would choose to remain with the Federation? The same Federation whose shadow organization attempted to kidnap you mere hours ago?" "The Federation didn't try to kidnap me," Peter corrected. "A rogue group operating outside Federation law did. Big difference." "Is it?" Toreth leaned back in her command chair, her fingers steepled. "From where I sit, Captain Picard, it appears your precious Federation cannot control its own elements. Section 31 operates with impunity, violates treaties, commits acts that would be considered war crimes, and yet Starfleet claims ignorance. How convenient." Picard's voice cut through the bridge like a phaser on maximum setting. "Commander, Section 31's existence is an embarrassment to the Federation and everything it stands for. If we could eliminate them, we would, but they operate in shadows, use technology stolen from dozens of sources, and have infiltrated every level of government. They are a cancer, not a policy." "Pretty words, Captain, but words don't change the strategic reality. You have an enhanced human aboard your vessel, a being with abilities that could revolutionize military applications. The Romulan Empire has a legitimate interest in ensuring such a being doesn't become a Federation asset." Data's console chirped softly. He glanced at it, his expression unchanging. But his fingers moved with increased urgency. "Captain," he said quietly, "I am detecting 3 additional Romulan vessels approaching at high warp. ETA, 7 minutes. "She was stalling," Riker muttered, "keeping us talking while reinforcements arrived." Toreth's smile was sharp enough to cut duranium. "I prefer to negotiate from a position of strength, Commander Riker. Surely you understand." She returned her attention to Peter. "You have 7 minutes to make a decision, Spider-Man. Board the Valdor voluntarily and cooperate with our research, or we will be forced to disable the Enterprise and take you by force. I promise you, our methods are far more civilized than Section 31's. Peter's mind raced, enhanced cognition processing variables at superhuman speed. 4 Romulan warbirds. The Enterprise was powerful, but outnumbered and outgunned. If fighting started, people would die. Hundreds of people, maybe thousands. Starfleet officers who'd done nothing except try to protect him. And for what? Because he'd fallen through a dimensional rift he didn't create? His spider sense pulsed again, but this time it wasn't warning him away from the Romulans. It was pulling his attention to something else, a sensation he couldn't quite name, like static electricity building before a lightning strike. "Captain," he said quietly, not taking his eyes off Toreth, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly. If I go with them, if I surrender myself to prevent this ship from being destroyed, would you let me?" Picard stepped beside him, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of a man who'd made impossible choices and lived with the consequences. "Mr. Parker, Starfleet does not sacrifice individuals to appease hostile powers, not when I command this vessel." "Even if it means your crew dies?" "Even then," Peter laughed, a short, bitter sound. "You're insane. You know that? All of you. Klingons with their honor, you with your principles, Section 31 with their greater good justifications. Everyone in this universe is willing to die for abstract concepts." He turned to face Picard directly. "In my world, Captain, people die for real reasons. A kid walks home through the wrong neighborhood. A woman stays in an abusive relationship too long. A man tries to stop a robbery and gets shot. Those deaths matter. They're not statistics in some political calculation." "You're right," Picard said simply. "They do matter. But so do you, Mr. Parker. If I hand you over to the Romulans to save this ship, what message does that send? That the Federation abandons those under its protection when threatened? That we value our own lives above the principles we claim to uphold? Maybe sometimes you should, Peter said. Maybe sometimes the smart move is to sacrifice one person to save hundreds. That, Counselor Troy said softly, is not what you truly believe. Peter spun to face her, and even through the mask she could feel the anguish radiating from him. How would you know what I believe? Because I feel it, Troy said, moving closer. Your guilt, your fear, your desperate need to protect others, even at the cost of yourself. You've spent 10 years carrying the weight of every person you couldn't save, every mistake you made, every loss that might have been prevented if only you'd been faster, stronger, better. But underneath all that pain, there's something else. She placed a hand on his arm. Hope, the belief that people can be better than they are. That sacrifice means something when it's chosen freely, not when it's coerced. Peter's hands clenched into fists. His spider sense was screaming now. Not danger, but something else. Potential. Possibility. The universe balanced on a knife's edge. Commander Torith, he said, turning back to the view screen, I'm not going with you, not because Captain Picard forbids it, but because I don't trust you. I don't trust Section 31. I don't trust anyone in this universe except myself. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to back off, let the Enterprise go, and forget you ever saw me. In return, I won't do something we'll all regret. Torith's laugh was genuine, almost delighted. And what exactly could you do, Spider-Man? You're on a starship. You have no weapons, no resources, no leverage. What possible threat could you pose? Peter's spider sense reached a crescendo. The static electricity feeling intensified, and suddenly he understood what it meant. There was someone else here, watching, waiting to see what he would do. I could ask Q for help, Peter said. The bridge erupted in shocked silence. Even Data looked surprised, as close to that emotion as an android could manage. You presume to command the Q continuum? Torith's voice carried disbelief. The omnipotent beings who treat lesser species as playthings? I don't presume anything, Peter said, but I'm betting that if Q brought me here, it was for a reason. And I'm betting that reason involves seeing how I handle impossible situations. He raised his voice, speaking to the empty air. So here's my question, Q, or whoever's watching. Did you bring me here just to watch me fail? Or did you actually want to see what happens when someone from my universe meets yours? For 3 heartbeats, nothing happened. The bridge crew exchanged glances, wondering if the stress had finally broken Spider-Man's mind. Then reality hiccuped. Space folded, causality inverted, and a figure appeared on the bridge in a flash of white light. He wore a Starfleet captain's uniform from a century ago, his hair slicked back, his face bearing an expression of supreme amusement. Q had arrived. My, Q said, his voice dripping with theatrical pleasure. The spider has figured it out. I'm impressed, Peter Parker. Most mortals don't realize they're being tested until it's far too late. Picard's voice was ice. Q, I should have known you were behind this. Behind it? Jean-Luc, I'm offended. I merely opened a door and invited our arachnid friend through. What he does with the invitation is entirely up to him. Q circled Peter, studying him like a fascinating specimen. Tell me, Spider-Man, do you know why I brought you here? To test me, Peter said, or test them, or test all of us. You omnipotent types love your tests. Clever boy. Q snapped his fingers, and suddenly the view screen split again. This time it showed dozens of images. Planets in crisis, people suffering, civilizations on the brink of collapse. This is the Alpha Quadrant, Mr. Parker. Billions of souls living under the rules of the Prime Directive. The Federation sees suffering and does nothing because its principles forbid interference. Section 31 sees suffering and commits atrocities because the ends justify the means. The Romulans see suffering and exploit it for political gain. Q's smile faded, replaced by something almost serious. You see suffering and you act. No hesitation, no calculation, just immediate, absolute moral certainty that people in danger must be helped. That's what heroes do, Peter said. Heroes, Q repeated, tasting the word. Such a quaint concept. But here's my question. What happens when your absolute moral certainty meets a universe that doesn't share it? Do you impose your will on others? Do you become the very thing you fight against? Someone who uses power without consent? Peter's mind reeled. This was the test, not Section 31's kidnapping attempt, not the Romulan standoff. This the fundamental question of whether his personal ethics could coexist with a society that had different rules. I don't know, he admitted. I don't have an answer for you, Q. Excellent. Q clapped his hands together, his amusement restored. Honesty. How refreshing. You see, Jean-Luc, this is why I like him. He doesn't pretend to have all the answers. Q turned serious again, his omnipotent gaze boring into Peter. But you'll need to find an answer, Spider-Man, because the universe I've dropped you into is about to get much more complicated. Q snapped his fingers. The Romulan warbirds on the view screen vanished, not cloaked, but literally erased from existence, as if they'd never been there at all. Commander Torres' image froze mid-sentence, then dissolved like smoke. The Romulans will forget this encounter, Q said. Section 31 will find their surveillance data corrupted. You have a reprieve, Mr. Parker, a chance to explore this universe, to learn its rules, to decide what kind of hero you want to be here. He moved close, his voice dropping to something almost genuine. But be warned, I've removed the immediate threats. I haven't removed the fundamental problem. You don't belong here. Your presence disrupts the natural order, and sooner or later, someone will notice that disruption and try to eliminate it. Why are you helping me? Peter asked. Helping you? Q's laugh echoed through the bridge. Oh, Peter, I'm not helping you. I'm giving you enough rope to either pull yourself up or hang yourself with. The choice, as always, is yours. He turned to Picard. Captain, I suggest you find a way to send our friend home before the universe decides to correct his presence more permanently. And how exactly are we supposed to do that? Picard demanded. Q's smile was enigmatic. That's for you to figure out. I've given you time. Use it wisely. He began to fade, his form dissolving into white light. Oh, and Spider-Man? One more thing. The dimensional breach that brought you here? It wasn't random. It was a response. Your universe and this one touched for a reason. Find that reason, and you'll find your way home. He vanished. The bridge remained silent for a long moment, everyone processing what had just happened. Then Worf spoke, his voice carrying frustration and respect in equal measure. That entity removed 4 Romulan warbirds from existence with a thought, and made them forget they were ever here, Data added. The implications for causality are staggering. Peter pulled off his mask, running a hand through his hair. So let me get this straight. An omnipotent being brought me here as some kind of test? Section 31 wants to dissect me, the Romulans wanted to study me, and now I need to figure out why 2 universes decided to touch each other, or I'll be stuck here forever. He looked at Picard. Captain, I think I need that drink now. Despite everything, Picard smiled. I think we all do, Mr. Parker, but first we need to understand Q's warning. If your presence here is disruptive, we need to know how and why. Data, begin a full analysis of the dimensional breach. Geordi, work with him. Find out what caused 2 universes to touch. Aye, Captain. Mr. Parker, Picard continued, you asked me earlier what happens now. Here's my answer. We find out why you're here. We learn what connection exists between your universe and ours. And we get you home. His expression hardened. But in the meantime, you're under the protection of this crew and this ship. Section 31, the Romulans, the Borg. It doesn't matter who comes for you. They'll have to go through us first. Peter felt something break inside him, not shattering, but the careful walls he'd built around his heart cracking just enough to let something in. Trust. The possibility that he wasn't alone. Thank you, Captain, he said quietly. Don't thank me yet, Picard replied. Q doesn't give gifts without strings attached. Whatever test he's orchestrated, we're all part of it now. Troy's voice was troubled. Captain, there's something else. When Q removed the Romulans from existence, I felt something. A disturbance, as if the universe itself noticed and didn't approve. Data's console beeped urgently. Captain, I am detecting unusual subspace fluctuations emanating from the dimensional breach's former location. The quantum signature is changing, becoming more complex. It is almost as if the Enterprise shuddered, not from weapons fire or engine malfunction, but from something else. Reality itself rippling like water disturbed by a stone. Red alert, Riker commanded. All hands to battle stations. Peter's spider sense exploded. Not danger from outside the ship, danger from everywhere. From the fabric of space itself, from the universe deciding that his presence was an infection that needed to be excised. Captain, Data said, his voice carrying something that might have been fear if androids could feel it. I am detecting a massive energy buildup at the breach site. Readings are consistent with a Borg transwarp conduit opening, but the energy signature is wrong, corrupted somehow, as if the Borg technology has been affected by dimensional instability. On the view screen, space tore open. A swirling vortex of green and black energy materialized, and from its depths emerged something that made Peter's blood run cold. A Borg cube, but not like any Borg cube in Federation records. This one was twisted, organic, and mechanical, fused in ways that violated natural law. Its hull pulsed with energy that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, and its sensors were locked directly on the Enterprise, specifically on Peter Parker. A voice echoed across subspace, mechanical, emotionless, but carrying an undertone of something else. Hunger. We are the Borg. We have detected genetic and dimensional distinctiveness. Spider-Man will be assimilated. Resistance is futile. Peter looked at Picard, then at the twisted abomination on the view screen. Captain, I'm starting to think Q's test just got a lot harder. Agreed, Picard said grimly. Mr. Worf, charge all weapons. Mr. LaForge, maximum shields. All hands, prepare for combat. The awakening had become a nightmare, and somewhere in the Q continuum, Q watched with interest, wondering if this would be the moment humanity and Spider-Man finally learned what it meant to face consequences they couldn't punch or web-sling their way out of. The bridge of the Enterprise transformed into organized chaos as the twisted Borg cube advanced, its corrupted hull pulsing with energy that sensors couldn't fully analyze. Peter stood frozen at the view screen, his spider sense screaming warnings that made no sense. Danger from every direction simultaneously, as if the cube existed in multiple dimensions at once and threatened him from all of them. Distance, Picard demanded, his command voice cutting through the alarm klaxons. 50,000 kilometers in closing, Data reported. The vessel is traveling at warp speed without generating a conventional warp field. The dimensional instability surrounding it appears to be warping space-time locally. Captain, this is theoretically impossible. Tell that to them, Riker muttered. The Borg voice echoed through the bridge again, but now Peter could hear the wrongness in it. Multiple voices speaking in imperfect synchronization, as if the hive mind itself was fractured. Dimensional anomaly detected. Biological distinctiveness. Enhanced human physiology. Technological distinctiveness. Organic polymer synthesis. Cultural distinctiveness. Individualistic moral framework. All will be assimilated. The collective requires understanding of cross-dimensional mechanics. They want to assimilate the knowledge of how you got here. Beverly Crusher's voice came through the comm from sickbay. Peter's biology might give them insight into dimensional travel. If the Borg gained that capability, they could assimilate entire parallel universes. Picard finished, his face grim. Mr. Worf, fire at will. The Enterprise's phaser arrays erupted, golden beams of directed energy striking the cube's shields. The impact sent ripples across the surface, but the shields held, and worse, they adapted in real time, the energy signature shifting to compensate for the phaser frequency. Minimal damage, Worf reported. They've already adapted to our weapons. Photon torpedoes, full spread, Picard ordered. 6 torpedoes streaked toward the cube, their antimatter warheads detonating in brilliant explosions that lit up the view screen. For a moment, it seemed like they'd broken through. Sections of the cube's hull showed damage, exposed circuitry sparking in the vacuum of space. Then the cube did something impossible. The damaged sections rippled, reality bending around them, and the hull repaired itself by pulling matter from alternate dimensions, plating that flickered between states of existence, simultaneously solid and ethereal. "Captain," Data said, his positronic brain struggling to process the readings, "the cube is utilizing dimensional instability as a resource. It is literally drawing matter and energy from parallel universes to repair damage. Conventional weapons will be ineffective." Peter's enhanced mind raced through possibilities, his scientific training warring with superhero instinct. "Data, you said the cube is corrupted, that the dimensional instability is affecting it. What if that's a weakness? What if it's not fully in our dimension?" Data's head tilted. "An intriguing hypothesis. If the vessel exists partially in multiple dimensions, it would explain the sensor anomalies and the unusual repair mechanisms. However, exploiting such a weakness would require—" The Enterprise shuddered violently as a tractor beam locked onto the ship, but this was unlike any tractor beam in Federation records. Green energy wrapped around the Enterprise, and Peter felt it in his bones. A pulling sensation, as if something was trying to yank him out of reality itself. "They're attempting to transport through our shields." Geordi's voice was urgent from engineering. "But the transport signature is wrong. It's not targeting the whole ship. It's targeting specific biosignatures." "Mine," Peter said. His spider sense was screaming so loudly now it felt like his head would split open. "They're trying to beam me directly to the cube." "Shields are holding," Worf reported, "but they're fluctuating. If the Borg maintain this attack for another 2 minutes, they'll pull me through," Peter finished. He turned to Picard. "Captain, I have an idea, but you're really not going to like it." "I'm listening." "The Borg want me because I'm a dimensional anomaly. My presence here is disrupting space-time. Q said so. What if I use that disruption against them?" Peter's hands clenched. "What if I let them beam me aboard?" "Absolutely not," Beverly's voice cut in. "Peter, you'd be assimilated in seconds. We've seen what the Borg do to individuals. They strip away everything that makes you human and turn you into a drone." "Not if they can't figure out how to assimilate me," Peter countered. "Data, you said my biology is partially arachnid, right? That the proteins in my bloodstream are unique to my universe. What if those proteins are incompatible with Borg nanoprobes?" Data's fingers flew across his console. "Scanning the records of your bioanalysis, Mr. Parker, your hypothesis has merit. Your cellular structure contains elements that do not exist in this universe's periodic table. The Borg nanoprobes are designed to assimilate known biological configurations. They would attempt to adapt to your unique chemistry, but the process would take time, potentially several minutes." "Several minutes," Peter repeated. "That's enough time for me to cause some serious damage from the inside." "You'd be alone on a Borg cube," Riker said, "surrounded by thousands of drones with no backup, no way to escape." "Commander, I've fought the Sinister Six, survived Venom, and died and came back. I've been alone against impossible odds before." Peter pulled his mask on, the familiar weight settling over his face like armor. "Besides, my spider sense will warn me about danger, and if the Borg are partially existing in multiple dimensions, maybe I can use that against them." Picard stood, moving to face Peter directly. "Mr. Parker, what you're proposing is suicide." "Maybe," Peter admitted, "but if I don't do something, they'll eventually break through your shields and take me anyway. At least this way, I'm choosing the terms." He looked around the bridge, meeting the eyes of crew members who'd become something like friends in the span of hours. "And maybe, just maybe, I can screw up their systems enough that you can hit them with something that actually works." Troy placed a hand on Picard's arm. "Captain, I sense his determination. He's made up his mind." "His mind is reckless," Worf growled, but there was respect in the Klingon's voice. "However, it is also brave, a warrior's choice." Picard studied Peter for a long moment, and Peter saw the calculation happening behind those eyes. The weight of command, the burden of deciding whether one life was worth risking to save hundreds. It was the same calculation Peter made every time he swung into danger, except Picard had to make it for someone else. "Very well," Picard said finally, "but you won't be going in blind. Data, can we transmit information directly to Mr. Parker once he's aboard the cube? Negative, Captain. The dimensional instability would corrupt any subspace signal. However, Data's eyes brightened. I could program a communicator with preloaded information about Borg cube layouts, vulnerable systems, and tactical data. It would function as a standalone database. Do it. Mr. LaForge, prepare a transporter lock on Mr. Parker. The moment I give the order, get him off that cube, whether he's ready or not. Captain, Peter said, I need one more thing. Web fluid. My shooters are almost empty, and I'm going to need a lot more if I'm going to do this right. Can your replicators synthesize it? Beverly's voice came through, professional, despite her clear concern. I have the chemical formula from the bioscan. But Peter, replicating organic compounds that complex will take time we don't have. Then give me what you can, Peter said. Even a few shots could make the difference. Geordi, Beverly said, I'm transmitting the formula to engineering. Priority 1, replication. The Enterprise shuddered again, more violently this time. The tractor beam was intensifying, reality itself straining as the corrupted Borg cube pulled at the fabric of spacetime. Shields at 60%, Worf reported. Estimate 3 minutes until they fail. Data handed Peter a modified communicator, now loaded with Borg tactical data. This contains everything we know about cube architecture. The primary systems are located in the central plexus, navigation, weapons, shield generators, and the Queen's chamber, if one exists. Destroying any of these would significantly impair the vessel. The Queen's chamber, Peter repeated. Like a hive queen? Precisely. The Borg Queen is the nexus of the collective's consciousness. Without her, the drones become disorganized, vulnerable. However, Data's expression was as close to worried as an android could manage. The Queen is also the most dangerous individual on any Borg vessel. She possesses intelligence, creativity, and tactical genius that individual drones lack. Great, Peter muttered. So I'm going to fight a super-intelligent space zombie queen on her home turf while trying not to get assimilated. This is officially the weirdest Tuesday I've ever had. Despite everything, several bridge officers laughed, brief, nervous laughter that broke the tension for just a moment. Geordi's voice crackled through the comm. Parker, I've got 3 full cartridges of web fluid ready. It's not perfect. The replicator couldn't quite match the tensile strength of your original formula, but it should hold. I'll take it, Peter said. A junior officer appeared from the turbo lift, carrying the web fluid cartridges. Peter loaded them into his shooters with practiced efficiency, his enhanced reflexes making the process take mere seconds. The familiar weight of full shooters was reassuring, a small piece of normalcy in a universe gone mad. Mr. Parker, Picard said, extending his hand, if you survive this, we will get you home. You have my word. Peter shook the captain's hand, feeling the strength in the older man's grip. And if I don't survive, Captain, make sure the Borg don't get anything useful from my body. Blow the cube to pieces if you have to. Shields at 40%, Worf announced. 2 minutes until failure. Picard nodded to the transporter chief. Prepare to lower shields on my mark. We'll create a gap just long enough for Mr. Parker to beam out. If the Borg want him, we'll give them exactly what they ask for. His eyes hardened. And they'll regret it. Peter moved to the transporter pad that had been set up on the bridge for emergency evacuations. He stood in the center, his spider sense screaming warnings that he deliberately ignored. This was insane. This was reckless. This was exactly the kind of thing Uncle Ben would have warned him against. But Uncle Ben had also taught him that with great power comes great responsibility. And right now, Peter's power, his abilities, his dimensional anomaly status, his sheer stubborn refusal to let innocent people die, was the only thing that might save this ship. Captain, he said, one more thing. If this works, if I manage to screw up their systems, hit them with everything you've got. Don't hold back. Don't worry about me. Just blow that cube to hell. Understood, Picard said. The Enterprise shuddered one final time. The tractor beam intensified to unbearable levels, and Peter felt reality itself beginning to tear. Now, Picard commanded, lower shields, transport Mr. Parker directly into the cube's interior. Godspeed, Spider-Man. The world dissolved into swirling light. Peter felt himself being pulled apart and reassembled, the transporter beam carrying him across 50,000 kilometers in an instant. But something was wrong. The beam was corrupted by the dimensional instability, and he was experiencing the transport on a level humans weren't meant to perceive. He saw himself existing in multiple states simultaneously, felt his consciousness stretched across parallel realities, glimpsed infinite versions of himself making infinite choices. Then the transport completed, and Peter materialized on the Borg cube. The first thing he noticed was the sound, or rather, the lack of it. Despite thousands of drones moving through the corridors, their footsteps made no noise. The mechanical hum of the ship was omnipresent, a low-frequency vibration that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. The second thing he noticed was the smell, ozone and decay, organic matter merging with machinery in ways that turned his stomach. The third thing he noticed was that every drone in the corridor had stopped moving. Thousands of eyes, some biological, some mechanical, turned to stare at him in perfect synchronization. "Spider-Man," the collective voice spoke through every drone simultaneously. "Dimensional anomaly. You will be assimilated. Resistance is futile." Peter crouched into a fighting stance, his spider sense mapping the positions of every threat in the corridor. "Yeah," he said, firing webbing at the ceiling and yanking himself up, just as the drone surged forward. "I get that a lot." He swung through the Borg cube's interior, and the battle for his identity, and possibly the fate of two universes, began. The interior of the Borg cube was a nightmare made manifest. Corridors stretched in impossible geometries, walls lined with alcoves where drones stood in regeneration cycles, their organic components grafted to mechanical frameworks in ways that defied biology and mercy. Green light pulsed through conduits that seemed to breathe, and the air tasted of copper and electricity. Peter swung through this hellscape, his spider sense the only thing keeping him alive as drones reached for him with assimilation tubules, mechanical appendages tipped with injection needles carrying billions of nanoprobes. He fired webbing constantly, gumming up joints, covering sensors, creating barriers between himself and the endless tide of cyber zombies pursuing him. "Assimilation inevitable," the collective voice droned. "Dimensional distinctiveness will be added to our perfection. You cannot escape." "I don't need to escape," Peter gasped, pulling himself along the ceiling as drones climbed walls below him. They could wall crawl too, he realized with horror, magnetic systems in their limbs mimicking his molecular adhesion. "I just need to cause enough chaos that the Enterprise can take you down." He consulted Data's downloaded information while swinging, his enhanced cognition processing tactical data at superhuman speed. The central plexus was 300 meters deeper into the cube, through corridors packed with drones. No way he could fight through that many enemies. But there was another option, an auxiliary power junction that, if destroyed, would cascade through multiple systems simultaneously. Peter changed direction, swinging toward the junction. His spider sense screamed and he twisted midair, narrowly avoiding a cutting beam that would have severed his web line. A tactical drone, more heavily armed than the standard models, had targeted him with what looked like a small-scale phaser array integrated into its arm. "Adapting to combat patterns," the Borg announced. "Enhanced reflexes detected. Probability calculations suggest Subject Parker utilizes precognitive ability. Compensating." 3 more tactical drones appeared, their weapons firing in a coordinated pattern that Peter's spider sense couldn't fully map. Too many angles, too many shots coming too fast. He took a hit to the shoulder, not a direct strike, but a glancing blow that burned through his suit and seared his skin. Pain exploded through his arm. Peter grit his teeth, using the pain to focus. He'd been hurt before, broken ribs, dislocated shoulders, once even a collapsed lung. Pain was just information, his body's way of telling him he was still alive and still fighting. He fired webbing at a conduit above the tactical drones and yanked hard, ripping it free. Electricity arced through the corridor, and while the drone's shields protected them from the worst of it, the distraction gave Peter the seconds he needed to put distance between them. His communicator chirped. Data's voice transmitted before Peter had beamed over. "Mr. Parker, be advised, Borg adaptive shields require 3.7 seconds to compensate for new attack frequencies. If you can vary your offensive methods rapidly enough, you may be able to overwhelm their adaptation protocols. Vary my methods, Peter muttered, swinging around a corner and finding himself in a massive chamber filled with regenerating drones. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands, all standing motionless in their alcoves. Right. Don't use the same trick twice. His spider sense suddenly screamed a different warning. Not danger, wrongness. Reality itself was bending in this chamber, dimensional instability making the walls flicker between solid and transparent. Through the transparent sections, Peter could see other chambers, other versions of the same space existing in parallel dimensions. And in some of those dimensions, he could see himself, alternate Peter Parkers, caught in different moments, some fighting, some already assimilated, their bodies twisted into Borg drones while their faces still showed traces of humanity. No, Peter whispered. That's not going to be me. Inevitable, the Borg voice responded, and now it was coming from everywhere. The walls, the floor, even the air itself seemed to vibrate with that emotionless certainty. Your dimensional instability makes you valuable. You will become a Borg dimensional scout, existing simultaneously in multiple realities, assimilating entire parallel universes in our name. See, that's where you're wrong, Peter said, firing webbing at the power junction he'd been searching for, a massive node pulsing with green energy, connected to dozens of conduits running throughout the chamber. Because I've learned something about power. Having it doesn't mean you use it just because you can. He yanked on the web line, pulling himself toward the junction like a slingshot. Drones reached for him, their movements synchronized with mechanical precision. But Peter's spider sense mapped every grasping hand, every injection tubule. He twisted through the air like a gymnast, his enhanced agility letting him slip through gaps that shouldn't have existed. His fist connected with the power junction, and 20 tons of enhanced strength focused into a single point. The node exploded in a shower of sparks and green energy, cascading failures rippling through connected systems. Lights flickered, drones stumbled as their regeneration cycles interrupted, and somewhere deep in the cube, a presence awakened, ancient, intelligent, and furious. You have damaged primary systems, the Borg voice said, but now there was something else in it. Not emotion, not quite, but an awareness that hadn't been there before. You will be brought before the Queen. She wishes to understand your defiance. The chamber's walls opened, and a passageway revealed itself. Organic and mechanical merged so completely that Peter couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. The passage led downward, deeper into the cube's heart, and his spider sense was telling him that following it was both suicidally dangerous and absolutely necessary. The Queen, Peter said. Right, because this wasn't hard enough already. He started walking. The drones didn't pursue anymore. They simply watched, thousands of dead eyes tracking his progress like a prisoner being escorted to execution. Peter's mind raced, calculating odds, running through possibilities. The Borg Queen was the hive mind's nexus. If he could somehow disrupt her, the entire cube would be vulnerable. But how do you disrupt a being that thought with the collective consciousness of trillions? The passage opened into a chamber that made Peter's breath catch. It was enormous, easily 100 meters across. The walls lined with technology so advanced it looked like art. And at the center, suspended in a web of cables and conduits that pulsed with green light, was the Queen. She was beautiful and horrifying in equal measure. Her face was still recognizably human, or had been once, but her skull was partially exposed, mechanical components integrated directly into her brain. Her body was a masterwork of biomechanical engineering, organic curves merged with metallic framework. But it was her eyes that captured Peter's attention. They held intelligence, awareness, and something that might have been curiosity. Spider-Man, she said, and her voice was different from the collective. Individual, feminine, carrying tones of authority and dark amusement. The dimensional anomaly. You have caused significant damage to my vessel. Impressive for an organic. Thanks, Peter said, staying in a crouch, his spider sense screaming warnings from every direction. I'd say it's been a pleasure, but your interior decorating leaves a lot to be desired. Very minimalist. Maybe add some curtains? The Queen smiled. actually smiled, and the expression was more unsettling than her blank-faced drones. Humor, a psychological defense mechanism to process fear. Your species uses it frequently. She moved closer, her mechanical components hissing and clicking. But you are not merely human, are you? My drone's analysis shows genetic modifications that should not exist in this universe. You are from elsewhere, from elsewhen. Dimensional accident, Peter said. Wrong place, wrong time, wrong universe. No, the Queen corrected. Right place, right time, right universe. She gestured, and a holographic display materialized. Images of the dimensional breach, energy patterns, quantum signatures that Peter's spider sense recognized, even though his conscious mind couldn't interpret them. Your arrival was not random. Two universes touched because they needed to touch, because something in your reality and something in mine resonated at the quantum level. Peter's enhanced mind processed this, connections forming. What resonated? You, the Queen said simply, or more precisely, what you represent. Your universe contains individuals with power who choose to act. Heroes, you call them. Beings who see suffering and intervene without calculation, without hesitation, without the restraints that civilizations like the Federation impose upon themselves. She moved closer, and Peter tensed, ready to dodge. Our universe contains the opposite. The Federation with its prime directive, restricting power's application. The Borg with our collective, eliminating individual choice. The Romulans with their calculated manipulation. Power used through systems, through rules, through collective consciousness. So the universe is touched because, what? They wanted to compare notes? Because they wanted to see what happens when absolute individualism meets absolute collectivism, the Queen said. You are the test, Spider-Man. You and I are the test. The hero who acts alone versus the consciousness that acts as one. Her hand moved with impossible speed, grabbing Peter's wrist before his spider sense could warn him. Mechanical strength far exceeding even his enhanced muscles held him immobile. Let us see which philosophy survives. Assimilation tubules emerged from her palm, approaching Peter's skin with inexorable certainty. His mind raced, desperation fueling enhanced cognition. The Borg wanted to assimilate his uniqueness, his dimensional nature, his individual choice. But what if individual choice was precisely what they couldn't assimilate? You're wrong, Peter said, forcing the words out despite terror threatening to choke him. It's not about individual versus collective. It's about, his spider sense suddenly pulsed with possibility, not danger. It's about consent. The tubules paused, millimeters from his skin. The Queen's expression flickered. Surprise, perhaps. Explain. The Federation's prime directive isn't about restricting power, Peter said, words tumbling out as his mind raced ahead. It's about consent. They don't interfere with pre-warp civilizations because those civilizations haven't consented to contact. Section 31 is evil because they act without consent. The Borg assimilate without consent. But me? He met the Queen's eyes. Every time I help someone, they're asking for help. Every time I stop a criminal, society has created laws consenting to that intervention. I'm not imposing my will. I'm responding to requests. Sophistry, the Queen said, but the tubules hadn't moved closer. Is it? Think about it. Your whole existence is based on forced collectivism, taking individuals and making them into something they didn't choose to become. You're the ultimate violation of consent, and that's why you can't truly assimilate me. Peter's voice grew stronger. Because my power, my abilities, my choices, they're all based on freely choosing to help. Strip away that choice through assimilation, and you don't get Spider-Man. You just get another drone. And what good does that do you? The Queen stared at him for a long moment. Her expression was unreadable, but something was happening. Peter could sense it, even if he couldn't articulate how. The hive mind was processing, calculating, running through scenarios. Then she released him. Peter stumbled back, ready to fight or flee. But the Queen simply stood there, her mechanical components humming softly. An interesting argument, she said. Ultimately irrelevant. The Borg assimilate what we require. Your consent is unnecessary. Then do it, Peter challenged. Assimilate me right now. But know this, the moment you do, you've proven my point. You've proven that the only way you can handle someone like me is to destroy what makes me me. You can take my body, my DNA, my dimensional signature, but you can't take my choice. And without that choice, I'm worthless to you. The chamber fell silent except for the omnipresent hum of Borg technology. The Queen's eyes bored into Peter, and he felt as if she were looking through him, examining not just his body but his soul. You believe consent matters, the Queen said finally. Very well. I propose a test. You claim your power derives from choice, from responding to requests for help. I will give you a choice now, and we shall see if your philosophy holds. The holographic display changed, showing the Enterprise on one side and a pre-warp planet on the other. This planet contains 2 million sentient beings, the Queen said. They are not aware of interstellar civilization. They have not developed warp technology. By Federation law, they are protected by the Prime Directive. Peter's spider sense screamed warnings. This was a trap, but he couldn't see the edges of it yet. My drones are approaching that planet now, the Queen continued. In approximately 4 minutes, we will begin assimilation of the entire population. They will be added to the collective, their distinctiveness serving our perfection. The Federation vessel pursuing me will arrive too late to prevent this. No, Peter breathed. You have a choice, Spider-Man. You can attempt to stop me here, fighting a battle you cannot win against my drones, against me, in the heart of my vessel. Or, the Queen smiled again, cold and calculated. You can ask me voluntarily to spare that planet. Consent freely given. Your philosophy in action. What's the catch? The catch is simple. If you ask me to spare them, you must willingly submit to partial assimilation. Not complete, I will preserve your consciousness, your choice, your individual identity, but you will be connected to the collective. You will hear our thoughts, feel our certainty, experience what it means to be truly unified with trillions of minds. Her eyes glittered. And then, with full understanding of what we are, you will make your final choice. Continue resisting or join us willingly. True consent with full information. Peter's mind reeled. This was impossible. There was no right answer. If he fought the Queen now, 2 million people would be assimilated while he was too busy fighting to help them. If he accepted her offer, he'd be partially assimilated himself, contaminated by the hive mind, possibly losing the very identity that made him Spider-Man. But 2 million people, 2 million lives who'd never asked to be part of this cosmic test, who'd never consented to being used as leverage in a philosophical debate between universes. His spider sense pulsed, and suddenly Peter understood. This was the test Q had set up, not whether Peter could physically defeat the Borg, not whether the Federation's principles were superior to individual heroism, but whether Peter Parker, given the choice between his own safety and saving others, would make the same choice he'd made 1,000 times before. If I agree, Peter said slowly, you spare the planet, all 2 million people, completely. You have my word, the Queen said. The word of the Borg? We do not lie. Deception is irrelevant when truth is inevitable. Peter looked at the holographic display. 2 million people. Fathers, mothers, children. People who'd never know they'd been in danger. Never know that someone from another universe had traded himself for their lives. With great power comes great responsibility, he whispered. Then louder, okay, I consent. Spare the planet and I'll submit to partial assimilation. But we're clear. You keep your word or the deal's off. The Queen's smile widened. Agreed. She extended her hand, and this time Peter didn't pull away. The assimilation tubules pressed against his wrist, pierced his skin, and Peter felt the nanoprobes enter his bloodstream. Pain exploded through his nervous system. Not physical pain, but mental, the sensation of foreign consciousness touching his mind. Millions of voices speaking simultaneously. The weight of the collective pressing against his individual identity. He screamed. He couldn't help it. The sensation was overwhelming, drowning, like being pulled underwater into infinite depths where no light could reach. And then, through the chaos, he heard them. All of them. Trillions of minds thinking in perfect harmony. The Borg collective, vast and terrible and utterly certain of its perfection. Peter fell to his knees, gasping, his spider sense screaming warnings that made no sense anymore because danger was everywhere and nowhere and inside him. The Queen watched, her expression unreadable. "Welcome, Spider-Man," she said, "to the collective." And on the Enterprise, Data's sensors detected something that made his positronic brain pause in calculation. Peter Parker's biosignature was changing, being rewritten, the dimensional anomaly that was Spider-Man beginning to merge with the Borg collective. "Captain," Data said quietly, "I believe we may have lost him." Peter's mind existed in two places simultaneously. Part of him knelt on the deck of the Borg cube, his body convulsing as nanoprobes rewrote his neural pathways. The other part floated in an infinite space filled with voices, trillions of them, speaking in perfect synchronization, sharing thoughts and experiences and knowledge accumulated across centuries of assimilation. He could feel them, the Borg, not as individuals but as a singular consciousness, vast and incomprehensible. He felt the certainty that drove them, the absolute conviction that assimilation was salvation, that individuality was chaos, that perfection could only be achieved through unity. There was no malice in the collective, no hatred, just cold, implacable purpose. But beneath that certainty, Peter felt something else, something the Queen hadn't mentioned. Pain. Every drone in the collective carried the echo of who they'd been before assimilation. Memories suppressed but not erased. Dreams locked away but not destroyed. Millions of voices screaming silently beneath the hive mind surface. Individual consciousness crushed under the weight of forced unity. The Borg weren't perfection. They were a prison made of flesh and circuitry, where trillions of souls existed in perpetual, unacknowledged agony. "You feel it now," the Queen's voice cut through the chaos, and Peter realized she was speaking directly into his mind. "The truth of what we are. Order imposed upon chaos. Strength derived from unity. This is what you could become, part of something greater than your limited individual existence." Peter's enhanced willpower, honed through a decade of fighting when exhausted and injured and terrified, asserted itself. His consciousness pushed back against the collective, creating a small space of silence in the infinite noise. "No," he said, and his voice echoed through the hive mind like a stone thrown into still water. "This isn't strength. This is slavery." The collective recoiled, actually recoiled, surprised by resistance from within. Drones throughout the cube stumbled as Peter's individual consciousness disrupted their synchronization. The Queen's eyes widened fractionally. "Impossible," she said. "The nanoprobes have integrated with your neural tissue. You should be unable to maintain individual thought." "Yeah, well," Peter gasped, forcing himself to his feet despite his body screaming in protest. "I've got a radioactive spider's nervous system mixed with human stubbornness. Your nanoprobes are having trouble deciding which biological template to follow." He could feel it now, the technology in his bloodstream trying to rewrite him and failing, his dimensional anomaly biology adapting in real time, treating the nanoprobes like any other foreign invader his immune system had learned to fight. "You're rejecting assimilation," the Queen said, and for the first time, Peter heard genuine surprise in her voice. "Your biology is incompatible with Borg technology. The dimensional variance, your cells exist partially in your origin universe's quantum state. The nanoprobes cannot fully integrate." Peter's spider sense suddenly clarified, showing him the truth with perfect precision. The partial assimilation hadn't made him Borg. It had made him something else. A bridge between individual and collective, existing in both states simultaneously. He could feel the collective, hear their thoughts, but he wasn't controlled by them. He was connected, but free, and that connection worked both ways. "You wanted to know what makes me tick," Peter said, his voice growing stronger as understanding crystallized. "You wanted to understand individual choice, consent, heroism. Well, congratulations. You're about to get a crash course." He reached out with his mind, following the connection the nanoprobes had created, and pushed his consciousness into the collective itself. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. Peter Parker's memories flooded into the hive mind. Not just data, but emotions. The love he'd felt for Uncle Ben. The guilt that consumed him after Ben's death. The joy of swinging through Manhattan at dawn. The terror of facing enemies who could kill him with a thought. The determination to save everyone, even when it was impossible. The loneliness of wearing a mask. The hope that tomorrow could be better than today. The collective had assimilated countless species, absorbed trillions of minds, but they'd never experienced anything like this. Pure, unfiltered emotion from someone whose entire identity was built on feeling too much, caring too deeply, refusing to stop trying even when logic said there was no hope. Drones throughout the cube stumbled. Some fell to their knees. Others clutched their heads as suppressed memories surged to the surface, awakened by Peter's emotional cascade. The Queen herself staggered, her mechanical components sparking as her neural processors struggled to handle the flood of individual consciousness. "What have you done?" she gasped. "I've given the collective what they asked for," Peter said, advancing on the Queen despite his body protesting every movement. The nanoprobes in his system were dying, his immune system recognizing them as foreign and attacking with enhanced efficiency. "You wanted to understand choice? Here it is. Every drone in your cube is feeling it right now. The memory of who they were before you stole their identity, the choice they never got to make." Throughout the cube, chaos erupted. Drones began breaking formation, their movements uncoordinated. Some attacked each other. Others simply stood motionless, processing the impossible sensation of individual thought returning after years or centuries of suppression. The hive mind was fragmenting, the Queen's control slipping as Peter's consciousness acted like a virus, spreading individuality through a system designed for absolute unity. "Cease this immediately," the Queen commanded, her voice distorted by static. "You are destroying millennia of perfection." "I'm destroying a lie," Peter countered. "You call it perfection, but it's just forced conformity. You talk about strength through unity, but you've never asked if anyone wanted to be unified. That's not strength. That's cowardice hiding behind technology." The Queen's face twisted with something that might have been rage. "You understand nothing. The collective provides order, purpose, freedom from the chaos of individual existence. Without us, the galaxy descends into conflict, competition, suffering." "Yeah, there's suffering," Peter agreed. "Life is suffering, but there's also joy and hope and love and 1,000 other things you've stripped away from every person you've assimilated. You've made a galaxy-spanning prison and called it paradise." He reached the Queen, standing face to face with the consciousness of trillions. "But I'm offering you a choice now, the same choice you offered me." "What choice?" "Let them go," Peter said simply. "Release every drone on this cube from the collective. Give them back their individual consciousness. Prove that the Borg can be more than just assimilation machines." Or, his spider sense pulsed, showing him the Enterprise on approach. Weapons charge, Picard giving orders to fire the moment they had a clear shot. Or keep fighting and lose everything when the Federation destroys this cube, because they're coming and you're too damaged to defend yourself. The Queen stared at him, her processors running through scenarios at impossible speed. Peter could feel her calculations through the degrading connection. She was analyzing outcomes, measuring losses, determining whether Peter's emotional cascade had permanently damaged the collective. Then her eyes focused on something past Peter, and her expression shifted to something that might have been satisfaction. "An interesting offer, Spider-Man, but you've made a tactical error." Peter's spider sense exploded with warning. He spun, but too late. A dozen tactical drones had entered the chamber, their weapons already trained on him. Unlike the other drones, these showed no signs of disruption. They'd been isolated from the collective's main consciousness, held in reserve specifically for situations like this. "I admire your conviction," the Queen said, her composure returning. "And your emotional attack was innovative. But you forget, the collective adapts. We are already isolating the affected drones, quarantining your influence, In 6 minutes, your virus of individuality will be purged from all systems. She smiled coldly. You have failed, Spider-Man. And now you will watch as we assimilate that pre-warp planet regardless of your consent. Our agreement is void. You attempted to destroy the collective, rather than simply submit to partial assimilation. That wasn't the deal, Peter protested. The deal was based on good faith. You acted in bad faith. Therefore, the deal is nullified. The Queen gestured and the tactical drones moved closer. You will be fully assimilated now. Your dimensional distinctiveness will still serve us, but your consciousness will be suppressed. And when the Enterprise arrives, we will assimilate their crew as well. Captain Picard will make an excellent addition to the collective. Peter's mind raced, desperate for options. His spider sense was still warning him about the tactical drones, but it was also showing him something else. Weaknesses in the Queen's chamber, systems still disrupted by his emotional attack, a narrow window where he could still act. Then he heard it, a voice cutting through the chaos of the collective, transmitted on a frequency the Borg hadn't isolated. Data's voice is speaking directly to the nanoprobes in Peter's system, using them as a receiver. Mr. Parker, if you can hear this transmission, the Enterprise is in position. We have analyzed the dimensional instability surrounding the cube. Captain Picard has authorized a desperate measure. We will fire a modified photon torpedo directly into the dimensional rift, collapsing it and sealing the breach permanently. The resulting cascade will destroy the cube, but you must evacuate before we fire. You have 60 seconds. 60 seconds. Peter looked at the Queen, at the tactical drones surrounding him, at the holographic display showing 2 million people on a planet who would die if he left now. 60 seconds to make a choice that would define not just his fate, but the fate of everyone involved in this cosmic test. His spider sense pulsed one final time, showing him a path forward. It was insane. It required perfect timing. It would probably kill him. Peter smiled behind his mask. You know what the difference is between you and me? He asked the Queen. Enlighten me. You calculate, I improvise. He fired webbing at the holographic projector, yanking it free and hurling it at the nearest tactical drone. The drone's weapon discharge struck the projector, and the resulting explosion sent feedback through the cube's systems. Peter was already moving, his enhanced reflexes carrying him through the gap in the drone's formation, wall crawling across the ceiling toward the chamber's power conduits. Stop him, the Queen commanded, but Peter was faster. He reached the primary conduit and, channeling every ounce of enhanced strength, ripped it free from its housing. Electricity arced through the chamber, and the dimensional instability, already weakened by Peter's presence, collapsed inward. Reality fractured. The cube's carefully maintained existence across multiple dimensions shattered, and suddenly Peter could see through the walls into adjacent realities. He saw the Enterprise firing its modified torpedo, saw the dimensional breach beginning to collapse, saw alternate versions of himself making different choices, following different paths, and he saw one path where everyone survived. Enterprise, he shouted into his communicator, praying they could still hear him through the dimensional chaos. I'm marking the Queen's exact location with my web fluid. When you see the beacon, fire everything you've got at these coordinates. He fired webbing directly onto the Queen, coating her in the phosphorescent compound that would show up on Federation sensors like a targeting beacon. Then he ran, his spider sense guiding him through collapsing corridors as reality itself began tearing apart. The Queen's scream echoed through the collective, rage and disbelief that one individual had caused this much damage. Destroy him! Kill Spider-Man! Drones poured from every corridor, but Peter's spider sense was operating at peak capacity now, the adrenaline and desperation pushing his precognitive abilities to their absolute limit. He dodged, weaved, swung through impossible spaces where walls existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. 45 seconds. Data's voice was urgent. Mr. Parker, you must reach the extraction point immediately. Peter's spider sense suddenly screamed a new warning. The pre-warp planet. The Queen, even in her death throes, had sent the order. Assimilate them all. 2 million people, about to be turned into drones because Peter had chosen to destroy the cube. No! Peter gasped, changing direction. Data, I need more time. We don't have more time. The dimensional collapse is accelerating. Then collapse it faster, Peter shouted. Target my position. Bring the whole thing down on top of the Queen before she can complete the assimilation order. That would kill you, Data said. And even through the mechanical precision of his voice, something like distress came through. I know, Peter said. Do it anyway. I can't let 2 million people pay for my choices. Silence on the comm. Then Picard's voice, heavy with the weight of command. Mr. Data, prepare to fire on Mr. Parker's coordinates on my mark. Captain, that was Beverly's voice, desperate. I know, Doctor, but he's right. We cannot allow the Borg to assimilate that planet. Picard's voice softened. Mr. Parker, if you can hear this, it has been an honor. The honor's mine, Captain, Peter said, and meant it. He reached the Queen's chamber again, finding her struggling to maintain control as her cube disintegrated around her. Hey, Your Majesty, remember what I said about choice? This is mine. I choose to save those 2 million people. I choose to stop you. And I choose to go down fighting, because that's what heroes do. The Queen's eyes met his, and in that moment, Peter saw understanding flicker across her face. You are willing to die for beings you've never met, for a planet you will never see, for a universe that is not even your own. Yeah, Peter said simply. That's the difference between us. You can't comprehend why someone would make that choice. That's why you'll never truly win. Fire! Picard's command echoed across subspace. The Enterprise's weapons spoke. Photon torpedoes modified with dimensional collapse technology, targeted directly on Peter's webbing beacon. They struck the cube with perfect precision, and the dimensional instability that the Borg had been exploiting turned against them. Reality itself imploded, the cube folding in on itself as multiple dimensions crushed together. Peter felt the universe squeeze around him, pain beyond description, the sensation of existing in too many places at once, his consciousness fragmenting across realities. And then, white light, pure and absolute. Q stood before him, in that place between dimensions where physical laws held no meaning. The omnipotent being's expression was unreadable. Well, Q said, that was quite a show, Peter Parker. You chose to sacrifice yourself for people you'd never met, in a universe not your own, to uphold a principle you'd held for barely a day. Very noble, very stupid, very human. Did they survive? Peter asked, his voice echoing strangely in the non-space. The planet, the Enterprise. Did my choice matter? Q smiled, genuine this time, not mocking. See for yourself. Reality snapped back into focus. Peter gasped, finding himself on the Enterprise's transporter pad, Data and the transporter chief staring at him in shock. Through the view screen, the Borg cube was gone. Not destroyed, but erased, collapsed into a dimensional singularity that winked out of existence as they watched. The pre-warp planet? Peter demanded. Safe, Picard said, stepping forward with relief evident on his face. The Borg's assimilation command was destroyed along with the cube. Mr. Parker, I don't know how you survived that. Our sensors showed you at the epicenter of the dimensional collapse. Q, Peter said simply. He pulled me out at the last second. He looked around the bridge, at the crew who'd risked everything to protect him. Thank you, all of you, for not giving up on me. You saved 2 million people and destroyed a Borg cube, Riker said. I think we're the ones who should be thanking you. But Peter shook his head. I did what anyone with power and opportunity should do. I made the choice that was right, even when it was hard. That's not heroism. That's just basic decency. Troy smiled through tears. That, Peter, is exactly what heroism is. The bridge crew began applauding, not the formal recognition of military commendation, but genuine, heartfelt appreciation for someone who'd proven that individual choice, individual sacrifice, and individual responsibility still mattered in a universe of collectives and directives and cosmic tests. And somewhere in the Q continuum, Q watched with satisfaction. The test was complete. Spider-Man had awakened the Star Trek universe to a truth they'd forgotten, that sometimes the right choice wasn't the logical one, the calculated one, or even the survivable one. Sometimes the right choice was simply to act, to help, to sacrifice yourself because others needed you. The Borg cube was gone. Section 31 was temporarily scattered. The Romulans had learned of the Federation's shadow elements, and Peter Parker had proven that heroism transcended universes. But the question remained, how would he get home? 3 days had passed since the Borg cube's destruction. The Enterprise traveled at Warp 6 toward Starbase 214, where Starfleet's top scientists awaited Peter Parker's arrival. In those 3 days, the young man from Queens had become something of a legend among the crew. The stranger who defied Section 31, challenged the Borg Queen, and survived a dimensional collapse through sheer determination and impossible luck. But Peter felt anything but legendary. He sat in his assigned quarters, modest accommodations, on Deck 9, staring at a PADD displaying Data's latest analysis of the dimensional breach. The news wasn't good. The rift that had brought him here was gone, collapsed by the Enterprise's weapons fire. Creating a new one would require energy outputs beyond anything the Federation could generate. Unless they found another way, Peter Parker was trapped in this universe permanently. The door chimed. "Come in," Peter called, not bothering to put his mask on. After 3 days, the crew had seen his face enough that hiding seemed pointless. Captain Picard entered, carrying a bottle of wine and 2 glasses. "Mr. Parker, I hope I'm not disturbing you. Just reading bad news over and over, hoping it'll change," Peter said with a tired smile. "What can I do for you, Captain?" Picard set the glasses down and poured the wine with practiced precision. "I thought you might appreciate some company, and perhaps some perspective." He handed Peter a glass. "This is a 2346 Chateau Picard, my family's vineyard in France. I've been saving it for special occasions." Peter accepted the glass, though he didn't drink. "Is this a special occasion?" "You're alive, Mr. Parker. In my experience, that's special enough." Picard settled into a chair, studying Peter with that penetrating gaze. "I've been speaking with Counselor Troy. She tells me you've been avoiding the crew, spending most of your time alone, reading reports about your situation." "I don't want to get attached," Peter admitted. "If I'm stuck here permanently, that's one thing. But if there's a chance I can get home, I need to take it. And that means not making this place feel too much like home." He finally took a sip of the wine. It tasted expensive, complex, nothing like the cheap beer he'd occasionally shared with friends back in New York. "Besides, everyone here has lives, duties, people they care about. I'm just the dimensional refugee they're trying to figure out how to send back." "Is that truly how you see yourself?" Picard asked. "Mr. Parker, Peter, in 3 days you've saved this ship twice, destroyed a Borg cube, protected 2 million innocent lives, and challenged every preconception we had about the limits of individual action. You're not a refugee. You're," he paused, choosing words carefully, "you're a reminder of something we've forgotten." "What's that?" "That sometimes the rules we create to protect ourselves can become prisons." Picard set down his glass. "The Prime Directive exists for valid reasons. I've seen what happens when advanced civilizations interfere with developing ones. The dependency it creates, the cultures destroyed, the unintended consequences. But I've also seen what you've done. You don't calculate costs and benefits. You don't debate ethical frameworks. You simply see someone in need and help them. And somehow, despite all the chaos that should create, it works." Peter laughed, bitter and self-deprecating. "Captain, you're giving me way too much credit. Half the time I'm just improvising, making it up as I go. I've made mistakes that got people killed. I've failed more times than I can count. And yet you continue trying," Picard observed. "That's the remarkable part. Not that you succeed always, but that failure doesn't stop you." He leaned forward. "Peter, I've commanded starships for decades. I've faced the Borg, negotiated with Romulans, been tested by Q himself, and I can tell you with certainty, what you possess is rare. Not your spider powers or your enhanced abilities. Your unwillingness to accept that some people simply can't be saved." The words hit Peter harder than he expected. He stared into his wine glass, seeing his reflection distorted in the dark liquid. "Uncle Ben used to say something similar, that the world needs people who won't give up, even when giving up is a smart thing to do." His voice cracked slightly. "I got him killed because I gave up on stopping a criminal. Told myself it wasn't my problem. 3 days later, that criminal shot Uncle Ben over $87. So yeah, Captain, I don't give up anymore. Can't afford to. Guilt is a powerful motivator, Picard said quietly. But Peter, it's also a terrible foundation for a life. You cannot save everyone. No one can. Not even Q, with all his omnipotence, truly understands every consequence of every action. The question isn't whether you'll fail. You will. The question is whether you can forgive yourself when you do. Peter met Picard's eyes and saw understanding there. The recognition of someone who'd also carried impossible burdens, who'd also made choices that cost lives, who'd also wondered if he was doing enough. You're speaking from experience. I once was assimilated by the Borg, Picard said, his voice steady but carrying old pain. They made me their spokesman, Locutus of Borg. I led an assault on Starfleet, killed 11,000 people at the Battle of Wolf 359. I had no control, no choice, but I remember every moment, every death. He took a long drink of wine. For years I told myself I should have resisted harder, should have found a way to break free sooner. Counselor Troy finally helped me understand. Some situations have no good options. Sometimes you survive, and that's the best outcome you can hope for. But those 11,000 people are dead regardless of how much guilt I carry, Picard finished. Peter, responsibility means acknowledging what you can control and accepting what you cannot. You cannot control random dimensional rifts. You cannot control Q's tests. You cannot control whether we find a way to send you home. But you can control how you spend whatever time you have here, isolated and guilty, or engaged with people who've come to care about you. Before Peter could respond, his spider sense tingled. Not danger, but attention. He turned to see Data standing in the doorway, his android features animated with something approaching excitement. Captain Mr. Parker, I apologize for the interruption, but I believe I may have found a solution to our dimensional problem. Peter was on his feet immediately. You can send me home? Not precisely, Data said, entering and activating a holographic display from his pad. The dimensional breach appeared in miniature, its chaotic energy patterns swirling. However, I have been analyzing the quantum resonance that caused the breach initially. Mr. Parker, when you arrived, you mentioned fighting someone called the Green Goblin? Norman Osborn, Peter confirmed. He's a psychopath with a glider and pumpkin bombs. What about him? The breach occurred during your confrontation with him. I theorized that perhaps the dimensional rift wasn't random, that something about your interaction with Osborn triggered the resonance. Data's fingers manipulated the display, zooming in on specific energy signatures. I have been reviewing the sensor data from your arrival. There are trace elements of an unknown energy signature mixed with your bioreadings. Not from your spider powers, but from something external. Something you were exposed to immediately before the breach. Peter's enhanced mind raced back to that moment, fighting Osborn above Times Square, the madman cackling as he threw experimental weapons. One had exploded near Peter, coating him in strange residue that had made his spider sense scream warnings. The Goblin had some kind of experimental device. He called it a reality disruptor, said Oscorp was developing it for military applications. I thought it was just another one of his toys. A reality disruptor, Data repeated, his positronic brain processing implications. If Osborn's weapon was designed to manipulate dimensional barriers, and if it interacted with your unique biology, specifically your dimensional anomaly status resulting from the radioactive spider bite, it could have created a resonance cascade. Your enhanced state combined with the disruptor's energy created a beacon that this universe's quantum field responded to. So the two universes didn't just randomly touch, Picard said, following the logic. They were drawn together by Peter's exposure to dimensional manipulation technology. Precisely, Captain. And if we can recreate that resonance, safely under controlled conditions, we may be able to reopen a dimensional breach specifically attuned to Mr. Parker's quantum signature, a bridge between his universe and ours. Hope surged through Peter, sharp and painful. How long would it take? Unknown. We would need to analyze the residual energy in your system, construct a device capable of amplifying that specific frequency, and generate sufficient power to tear through dimensional barriers. Conservatively, 2 weeks. Perhaps 3. 2 weeks. Maybe 3. It wasn't a guarantee, but it was a chance. Peter felt his throat tighten with emotion he'd been suppressing for 3 days. Thank you, Data. Seriously. Thank you. The android tilted his head curiously. You are welcome, Mr. Parker, though I must note that my motivation is partly selfish. Your presence has been educational. I have learned much about human decision-making from observing your choices. Educational, Peter laughed despite himself. Data, I've been making it up as I go. There's no lesson plan here. On the contrary, Data said with android earnestness, you have demonstrated that ethical behavior does not require complex calculation or adherence to established protocols. Sometimes morality is simply seeing suffering and choosing to alleviate it. As an android seeking to understand humanity, that lesson is invaluable. Picard stood, placing a hand on Peter's shoulder. Mr. Parker, Peter, you have 2 weeks before we attempt to send you home. I suggest you spend them not hiding in your quarters, but engaging with this universe. Let us show you what the Federation can be at its best. And perhaps, he smiled, you can show us what we sometimes forget about being human. Peter nodded, not trusting his voice to remain steady. After a moment, he managed, Okay, yeah, 2 weeks. I can do 2 weeks. The door chimed again. This time it was Beverly Crusher, Geordi LaForge, and Counselor Troy, all carrying various items, food, drinks, even what looked like an old-fashioned board game. We heard Data might have good news, Beverly said. Thought we'd celebrate. If you're interested, that is. Behind them, Worf appeared, looking uncomfortable but determined. I have brought blood wine. It is traditional Klingon celebration drink. Very strong. Perhaps even strong enough for enhanced metabolism. And I brought Gistral tea, Troy added with a warm smile, which is significantly less strong for those of us who prefer to remain conscious during celebrations. Peter looked at them, this crew from another universe, who'd protected him, fought beside him, and now refused to let him isolate himself in preparation for leaving. His spider sense was quiet, just a gentle background hum that suggested safety, companionship, belonging. Yeah, he said, pulling his mask off completely and tossing it onto the bed. Yeah, I'd like that. The next 2 weeks became something Peter hadn't expected, not just a countdown to departure, but an education in what the future could be. He worked with Data in the science labs, helping analyze the quantum resonance while learning about Federation technology that seemed like magic compared to 21st century Earth. He trained in the holodeck with Worf, the Klingon teaching him combat techniques while Peter demonstrated web-slinging maneuvers that made even the warrior raise his eyebrows in appreciation. He talked philosophy with Picard in the captain's ready room, debating the Prime Directive's applications and limitations, while sharing stories of heroism from both universes. He learned to replicate decent New York pizza, though even the Enterprise's advanced replicators couldn't quite nail the crust. He attended a concert performed by the ship's string quartet, experiencing music played by people who'd never known war or poverty or the desperate scramble for survival. And slowly Peter began to understand what Picard had meant. The Federation wasn't perfect, Section 31 proved that, and the debates about the Prime Directive showed deep philosophical divisions within Starfleet itself. But it represented something beautiful. The idea that different species could work together, that exploration could replace conquest, that the future didn't have to be dystopian. On the 14th day, Data announced the dimensional resonance device was ready. They gathered in engineering, Peter, Picard, Data, Geordi, Beverly, Worf, Troy, Riker, and half the engineering staff. The device looked unimpressive, a circular platform surrounded by what looked like oversized tuning forks that hummed with barely contained energy. The theory is sound, Geordi explained, checking readings one final time. We've amplified the quantum signature from the residual energy in Peter's cells. When activated, it should create a stable, well, relatively stable, dimensional bridge back to his universe, specifically to the moment and location he left from. Relatively stable? Peter asked. There is a 73.6% chance of success, Data clarified. A 21.4% chance the bridge will form, but collapse before you can traverse it. And a 5% chance of catastrophic dimensional destabilization. What does catastrophic dimensional destabilization mean? Best case scenario, you cease to exist across all dimensions simultaneously, Data said with android matter-of-factness. Worst case scenario, both universes collapse into a quantum singularity. Oh, is that all? Peter laughed nervously. 73%. I've faced worse odds. Peter, Beverly said, stepping forward with a medical kit. I've prepared these for you. She handed him several hypospray cartridges. They contain modified nanoprobes, the ones your body rejected. I've reprogrammed them to act as medical aids instead of assimilation tools. If you're injured, they'll accelerate your healing beyond even your enhanced rate. Consider them a gift from the Enterprise. Thank you, Doctor. Peter pocketed the cartridges carefully. Worf approached next, extending something wrapped in cloth. A batleth, a Klingon blade. I have inscribed it with your name. You fought with honor. This is the Klingon way of saying you are worthy of respect. Peter unwrapped the blade. It was beautiful, curved and deadly, etched with symbols he didn't understand. Worf, I don't know what to say. Thank you. Say nothing. Simply continue fighting with honor in your universe as you did in ours. Troy hugged him, sudden and warm and making Peter's eyes sting with tears he refused to shed. You've given us a gift too, Peter. You've reminded us why we're out here. Not just to explore or maintain peace, but to help people. Don't lose that part of yourself, no matter what happens. Picard was the last to approach. He extended his hand and Peter shook it, feeling the strength in the captain's grip. Mr. Parker, Peter, you arrived in our universe by accident and became part of something larger than yourself. You've proven that heroism isn't about power or technology, but about choice. The choice to act when others would hide. The choice to sacrifice when others would save themselves. The choice to hope when logic says there is none. Picard's expression was grave but warm. If circumstances had been different, I would have been honored to have you serve on this crew. The honor's mine, Captain, Peter said. All of you. You've shown me what people can be when they work together, when they aim for something better than themselves. I won't forget that. Ready when you are, Peter, Geordi called from the control console. Peter stepped onto the platform, pulling his mask on one final time. Spider-Man, the hero from another universe, standing in the heart of a starship that shouldn't exist, about to attempt something that violated every known law of physics. His spider sense was screaming now, not danger, but potential, the universe holding its breath. Activate the device, Picard ordered. The tuning forks hummed, their frequency rising until it became almost painful. Energy crackled around Peter, and suddenly he could see it, the dimensional barrier between universes, thin as gossamer and strong as titanium. The device was punching through that barrier, creating a bridge that existed in multiple realities simultaneously. Colors that had no names swirled around him. Peter felt himself being pulled forward toward the breach, toward home. He looked back one last time, seeing the Enterprise crew watching, some waving, some saluting, all of them acknowledging that something meaningful had happened here. Thank you, Peter shouted over the dimensional winds. For everything. Live long and... The breach pulled him through before he could finish. Reality twisted. Peter existed everywhere and nowhere. His consciousness stretched across dimensions. He saw infinite versions of himself, infinite choices, infinite outcomes. He saw the Enterprise continuing its mission, saw Section 31 regrouping, having learned that some anomalies couldn't be captured, saw the Romulan commander Torith filing a report about Federation shadow organizations that would change Alpha Quadrant politics for decades. He saw Q watching with satisfaction, having gotten the answer he wanted. That individual choice and collective responsibility could coexist. That heroism transcended philosophical frameworks. That sometimes the universe needed people who simply refused to give up. And then Peter Parker materialized above Times Square, exactly where he'd been when the dimensional breach had pulled him away. Norman Osborn was still cackling on his glider, pumpkin bombs in hand, completely unaware that Peter had lived weeks in another universe in what had been, for Osborne, a fraction of a second. Prosper, Peter finished, completing the phrase he'd started in another reality. Then he webbed Osborne in the face, yanked him off the glider, and finished the fight with efficient brutality born from 2 weeks of training with Klingons and fighting Borg drones. As he swung home through the Manhattan dawn, Peter felt different. Not physically, his powers were the same. His body unchanged except for the hypospray cartridges in his pocket and the Klingon blade strapped to his back. But mentally, spiritually, he'd been transformed. He'd seen a future where humanity didn't destroy itself, where people from different worlds worked together, where exploration replaced exploitation and hope replaced despair. It might take centuries for Earth to reach that future, if they reached it at all. But now Peter Parker knew it was possible, and that knowledge would drive him forward every time he put on the mask, every time he swung into danger, every time he made the choice to help when walking away would be easier. The Federation had the prime directive. Spider-Man had something simpler. With great power comes great responsibility, and in both universes, that would have to be enough. Peter Parker's arrival in the Star Trek universe was no accident. Q had orchestrated it as the ultimate test. What happens when absolute individualism meets a civilization built on collective principles and calculated restraint? The answer surprised everyone, including the omnipotent trickster himself. Spider-Man proved that heroism isn't about power levels or tactical advantage. It's about the unwavering choice to act, to sacrifice, to hope even when logic says there's no chance. He challenged Section 31's utilitarian calculations, the Borg's forced collectivism, and the Federation's prime directive philosophy, not by proving them wrong, but by demonstrating that individual conscience and moral courage still matter in a universe of rules and systems. The Enterprise crew, hardened by encounters with gods and monsters, learned something from the young man in the red and blue suit. They learned that sometimes the right action isn't the logical one, that sometimes you break the rules because someone needs help, and that's reason enough, that the future they're building requires not just principles, but people willing to embody those principles even when it costs them everything. For Peter Parker, the journey showed him what humanity could become. Not perfect, but better. A future where his kind of heroism wasn't an aberration, but a foundation. Where people used power responsibly not because they feared consequences, but because they understood that strength without compassion is just tyranny with better technology. The dimensional breach that brought them together has closed, but its impact remains. Section 31 learned that some threats can't be contained through force. The Romulans gained intelligence about Federation weaknesses that would reshape decades of diplomacy. The Borg, before their destruction, experienced something they'd never encountered. The power of individual choice resonating through the collective, like a virus they couldn't adapt to. And somewhere in the quantum foam between universes, the boundaries are thinner now, touching, waiting for the next moment when two realities need to meet, when two philosophies need to collide, when someone with power needs to remember that responsibility isn't a burden, it's a choice. Spider-Man awakened the Star Trek universe to a truth they'd always known but sometimes forgot, that the measure of civilization isn't its technology or its principles, but its willingness to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Even when it costs everything, especially when it costs everything, the stars remain infinite, indifferent to the struggles of those who voyage among them. But the people beneath those stars, in one universe and another, shine a little brighter now, knowing that somewhere out there, someone made the hard choice. Someone refused to give up. Someone proved that with great power comes great responsibility, regardless of which universe you call home.